Chapter 25. Senior Brother Xingyun. Are we just going to let him leave like this? Senior brother Li Rui died for nothing? Although they were afraid of Ling Xiao, the Li clan disciples were still brooding over Li Rui's death. Plus, they had the advantage in numbers, so they always thought they could bully him. If I, Ling Xiao, want to leave, none of you can stop me. Ling Xiao sneered. He carried the howling moon wolf's corpse on his shoulder and swaggered through the Li clan crowd. No one dared to make a move. The scene of Ling Xiao killing Li Rui, a martial artist at the 3rd level of the martial vein, with one punch was still vivid in his mind. They all knew that whoever made the first move would be the one to die. After passing through the crowd, Ling Xiao secretly let out a sigh of relief. To be honest, he had not fully recovered his true qi. After killing Li Rui, if the Li clan disciples really ganged up on him, he would have to run away. But he did not expect these people to be so cowardly that they did not even dare to make a move. This was a great help to him. Leaving after acting tough, so King exciting. Where did this Ling Xiao come from? Looking at his talent, I'm afraid he's not any worse than the genius Ling Yixue. Not only that, even Ling Fifan would not be able to leave like this when he was at the peak of the 2nd level of the martial vein. Li Xingyun's face darkened as he glared at Ling Xiao's retreating figure. No way, Senior Brother Xingyun. Are you talking about Ling Fifan, one of the 4 princes of Tianfeng City? That's right, it's him. Impossible. Ling Fifan reached the 4th level of the martial vein 3 years ago when he was 12 years old. He's a true genius. How could that kid compare to him? The 4 princes of Tianfeng City were all martial artists who reached the 4th level of the martial vein before the age of 14. They were definitely the role models for all the young people in Tianfeng City. That's right, Senior Brother Xingyun. You think too highly of that Ling Xiao. If you weren't injured today, Ling Xiao would have died without a doubt. Of course. Although Li Xingyun admired Ling Xiao, he was also confident that Li Rui would not have died today if he had not been injured. By the way, don't tell anyone about what happened today. Just say that Li Rui was killed by the Howling Moon Wolf. Otherwise, we'll all be in trouble. Li Rui's grandfather is an elder of our clan. His grandson was killed by the Ling clan, and we didn't help him. You know what the consequences are, right? Suddenly, Li Xingyun shouted coldly. I understand, Senior Brother Xingyun. After Ling Xiao left the Dragon Submission mountain range, he first made a trip to the market and exchanged all the excess materials for silver, a total of 35,000 taels of silver. This money was a must, because even if he wanted to find the Ling family's medicine hall to help him refine pills, he would still have to pay a service fee. Without money, it would be impossible. Furthermore, the more precious the pill, the higher the labor cost. However, 35,000 taels of silver was more than enough. After that, he went to the auction house and took out the 100 taels of silver that he had earned from the auction of the basic cultivation technique. He still gave the other party 10 taels of silver as a handling fee. All the silver was stored in the mountain and river diagram. This was safer than putting it in a bank. He heard that there was something called a storage ring in this world, but he had never seen it before. Even if there was one, it wouldn't be as useful as his mountain river diagram. This time, he had no intention of selling any cultivation technique. Now that he had the silver, he could temporarily stop such risky activities to prevent any accidents from happening. After leaving the auction house, Ling Xiao quickened his footsteps and returned to the Ling family, heading straight for the medicine hall. The medicine hall was the place where the Ling family specialized in refining pills and treating injuries. No matter the time, there would always be a lot of people. Hence, it was really difficult to avoid people that he didn't want to see. Just as he arrived at the medicine hall, Ling Xiao realized that Ling Yu and Ling Feng were also rushing over. Ling Yu was still that charming girl. At this moment, she was holding on to Ling Feng's arm. That sweetness really made one jealous. Ling Feng was still dressed in white, looking very suave. Furthermore, His aura seemed to be stronger than the last time they met. He stood there like a treasured sword that had been unsheathed. Hee, little beggar, you came to the medicine hall to ask for medicinal dregs again. Ling Xiao discovered Ling Feng and Ling Yu, and they naturally also discovered Ling Xiao, because no one was hiding from the other. In the past, when he had no money, Ling Xiao would always come to the medicine hall to ask for medicinal dregs, mainly for cultivation purposes. Because of this, he was often mocked and ridiculed. Humph! Our Northern Han sage ancestor was also a beggar in the past, a girl with long hair and short knowledge. He coldly snorted and didn't continue to pester her. After throwing down a sentence, he entered the medicine hall. Taking care of his own business was more important. Bickering was truly meaningless. That brat actually dares to compare himself to the sage ancestor. He truly doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. I heard that he defeated Ling Chong a few days ago and also defeated Ling Fei in Qinggong. With such little results, he's already starting to consider everyone else beneath him. Ling Feng coldly said, when it came to considering everyone else beneath him, perhaps the most suitable word to use would be him, Ling Feng. Ling Xiao had never looked down on anyone, including Ling Chong, who had been defeated by him twice in a row. He had always used his full strength. Big Brother Feng is right. The sage ancestor is a genius. What is he? A poor beggar. Ling Yu also giggled, not taking Ling Xiao seriously at all. In her opinion, although Ling Xiao's strength had increased, without money or backing, he still wouldn't be able to make it. Ling Xiao didn't know of the two's discussion. After entering the medicine hall, he directly went to the counter. That was the place to register. In order to break through to the third layer of the martial vein, he needed a breakthrough pill, a heart-protecting pill, and a meridian-shielding pill each. In addition, he also needed some qi-converging pills to increase his true qi. In the future, he would have to use them in special situations. If he directly bought them, a breakthrough pill would be 1,000 taels of silver, and a heart-protecting pill and a meridian-shielding pill would be the same price. As for the qi-converging pill, it was slightly cheaper. One pill was 500 taels of silver. Although Ling Xiao could afford it, there was no need for him to spend so much money. He had the ingredients, and after providing them, he only needed to pay 100 silver taels for each of the breakthrough pills, heart protection pills, and meridian protection pills as a service fee. A qi-converging pill would only cost 50 taels of silver as a labor fee. Big Brother Feng, this time I should be breaking through to the third layer of the martial vein. You have to give me the breakthrough pill, heart-protecting pill, and meridian-shielding pill, or else I won't be happy. At this time, Ling Yu and Ling Feng also walked in. Hearing Ling Yu's words, it seemed that she was also preparing to break through. However, this was normal. After all, Ling Yu had already been a martial artist at the second layer of the martial vein for a long time. In addition to Ling Feng's pills, it would be strange if she didn't break through. Little sister Yu, you also know that the annual large competition is about to begin. I have to seize the time to break through to the fourth layer of the martial vein. I need a large amount of breakthrough pills, heart-protecting pills, and meridian-shielding pills. You will have to bear with it for now. Hearing this, Ling Feng didn't plan to spend money for Ling Yu. Right now, he wanted to wholeheartedly break through to the fourth layer of the martial vein. The amount of pills he needed was huge. Although he was also a disciple of the Ling clan, his family's background was not as good as Ling Chong's. Moreover, even Ling Chong couldn't squander money without restraint. For the Ling clan to be able to become one of the 4 great clans of Tianfeng City, the rules were quite strict. Although there would occasionally be people who would violate them, it was only a minority. All right, then can I buy 2 qi converging pills? Ling Yu was clearly unhappy as she pouted and said, I'm afraid of you. All right, you can use the qi converging pills to consolidate your current cultivation. Chapter 26. Ling Xiao had no interest in other people's family affairs, but he was still a little happy inside. When he was still a beggar, Ling Yu bullied him because he had no money and no power. Later, when he entered the Ling family, Ling Yu abandoned him because he had no money and couldn't buy so many pills to improve his strength. Today, he had a huge sum of money in his hands and could come to the medicine hall to buy what he wanted. He wondered how Ling Yu would feel if she heard this. "Martial uncle, please give me a heart protection pill, a meridian protection pill, a breakthrough pill, and 10 qi gathering pills." Most of the people in the medicine hall were old people. The one standing behind the counter was Ling Xiao's martial uncle in terms of seniority. "Io, isn't this Ling Xiao? I've already prepared today's medicinal dregs for you." This old man was definitely not mocking Ling Xiao, but was genuinely concerned about Ling Xiao. In the past, Ling Xiao would come to collect medicinal dregs almost every day. Before he met this martial uncle, he was always humiliated and made things difficult for him. However, things were different after he met this martial uncle. This old man would always prepare medicinal dregs for him and wait for him to collect them. "Martial uncle, I don't want medicinal dregs today. I want breakthrough pills, heart protection pills, meridian protection pills, and qi gathering pills. These are the things I want." Originally, some of the Ling family disciples who came to buy pills or receive treatment thought they had misheard Ling Xiao's words and didn't pay much attention to him. But this time, Ling Xiao said it again. They finally heard it clearly. They all looked at Ling Xiao with strange gazes. "Hee, Brother Feng, that pauper actually said he wanted to buy pills. What a joke!" Ling Yu couldn't help but laugh. In her opinion, Ling Xiao had really lost his mind. Even she couldn't afford those pills, let alone Ling Xiao. The things he wants add up to 8,000 taels of silver. He really dares to brag. Ling Feng also sneered disdainfully. 8,000 taels of silver. Even if it was him, he could only earn that much in a month, and this was only because he had a good father. What was Ling Xiao? How could a mere foreign disciple with a dying old beggar at home have so much money? "Little guy, you're rich?" The old man behind the counter asked with a smile. "Martial uncle, I made a trip to the Dragon Submission Mountain range these few days. I was lucky enough to gather some herbs and even killed a few demonic beasts. I have quite a lot of silver on me now." As he spoke, Ling Xiao took out the materials for the Meridian Shielding Pill, Heart Shielding Pill, and Breakthrough Pill. He handed them over and said, "Martial uncle, here's the exchange method for these 3 pills. As for the Qi amassing pill, just buy it with money." Under the dumbfounded gazes of the crowd, Ling Xiao spent 5,300 taels of silver and 3 sets of alchemy materials to obtain what he wanted. Ling Yu's laughter stopped abruptly. Ling Feng's disdain turned into surprise. Given his strength, how could he enter the Dragon Submission Mountain range and hunt demonic beasts? Ling Yu and Ling Feng were inexplicably shocked. It wasn't just because Ling Xiao had become rich. It was also because Ling Xiao could actually retreat from the Dragon Submission Mountain range unscathed. One must know that although the family didn't have any mandatory rules, they generally didn't recommend martial artists below the 4th level of the martial vein to enter the Dragon Submission Mountain range. If they had to go, they had to maintain a group of at least 10 people. Moreover, they had to be led by a martial artist at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein. More importantly, intelligence was active at the edges. Until today, Ling Feng and Ling Yu had never been to the Dragon Submission Mountain range. Because they had money, they could ask for it from their family and didn't have to risk their lives. At this moment, they felt as though they had been defeated by Ling Xiao and revealed an extremely awkward expression. "Good lad, you've really struck it rich. You've improved. Great. Martial uncle will get the medicine for you." "Oh, right, martial uncle. Give me another 100 pieces of Jinchuang ointment and 10 bottles of healing pills." Ling Xiao suddenly recalled that if he frequently went to the Dragon Submission Mountain range, he would definitely get injured easily. There were Jinchuang ointment for external injuries and healing pills for internal injuries. Moreover, these things weren't very expensive. Of course, this was only for martial artists. To ordinary people, these things were still sky-high prices. Because one piece of Jinchuang ointment was 1 tael of silver, 100 pieces would be 100 taels of silver. A bottle of healing pills would be 100 pills worth 100 taels of silver. 10 bottles would be 1,000 taels of silver. If this was in the past, Ling Xiao wouldn't even dare to think about it. But now he could easily buy it. This was the difference between them. All right, no problem. After the transaction was completed, Ling Xiao nodded slightly at Ling Feng and Ling Yu before leaving. Then he smiled. Looking at the 2 liver-colored faces, he was very happy in his heart. However, he didn't laugh at them on the spot. Right now, the most important thing was to increase his strength, because he knew that his current strength wasn't a match for people like Ling Feng and Li Xinyun. Strength was everything. With strength, there would be dignity and more money. Ling Feng didn't bother with Ling Xiao. Ling Yu, on the other hand, looked at Ling Xiao awkwardly. Something seemed to have changed in his eyes. There was actually a trace of regret in his eyes. Fine, it's more fun when your strength increases. When it's time for the annual tournament, I'll make you lose wholeheartedly. It was only when Ling Xiao was about to leave the medicine hall that Ling Feng turned his head and forced a smile as he said a few words. However, that smile of his was uglier than crying. Ling Xiao smiled and didn't say anything. Anyway, the annual tournament was about to begin. Saying anything now was unnecessary. After leaving the medicine hall, he went straight home. His grandfather's health seemed to have improved a lot. You child, you didn't even say goodbye when you went out. His grandfather seemed to be a little angry. Grandfather, don't be angry. This is 100 taels of silver. In the future, you can buy whatever you want to eat. Now that we have money, we don't have to live like beggars anymore. Also, I plan to renovate this house. Otherwise, we won't be able to live in it when it rains. Where did you get so much money? Grandfather, since I didn't steal or rob, don't worry. Your grandson's strength is advancing very quickly. I reckon that by the time of the annual tournament, breaking through to the 3rd level of the martial vein won't be a problem. Ling Xiao didn't explain further. He threw the 100 taels of silver onto the table and went back to his room to prepare for his breakthrough. These days in the Dragon Submission Mountain Range, he had been constantly training and fighting. In fact, his strength could have broken through long ago. The reason why he didn't break through wasn't because he couldn't, but because he purposely suppressed it. Without the heart-protecting pill and vein-protecting pill, breaking through was very dangerous. He didn't want any accidents to happen. Poor people only had one life. Unlike those rich people, even if they were half dead, their families would still save them. But he couldn't. Once he was seriously injured, he wouldn't be far from death. After consuming the breakthrough pill, heart-protecting pill, and vein-protecting pill, Ling Xiao sat cross-legged and started to circulate the Scarlet Sun art, preparing to break through the 3rd martial vein. Needless to say, the power of the breakthrough pill was really ferocious. Just one pill and a terrifying power immediately spread in his dantian. Then it wrapped around the true qi in his body and rushed towards the 3rd martial vein. No wonder I need the heart-protecting pill and vein-protecting pill. If I didn't have it, this terrifying power might have shattered my heart meridians. The power of the breakthrough pill surprised Ling Xiao. The effects of the heart-protecting pill and vein-protecting pill were also greater than he had imagined. After the true qi increased, the meridians would definitely expand. If he didn't have these 2 pills, the meridians might have shattered. Chapter 27. Hong Qi looked through the window at Ling Xiao, who was cultivating inside the house, and couldn't help but reveal a gratified smile. Adopting Ling Xiao back, then, was probably the best thing he had done. He quietly left and walked into the courtyard. Looking at the stars in the sky, he was already in tears. Your son has grown up and become a talent. I, the old beggar, have not let you down. I only hope that you can be safe and sound. Ling Xiao didn't know what was happening outside the house. He didn't even know that his parents might still be alive. Right now, he only wanted to break through to the third level of the martial vein. He was using the power of the breakthrough pill to continuously break through to the third level of the martial vein. After a night, Ling Xiao suddenly opened his eyes and punched out. Clang! A loud sound rang out. The thick brick wall in front of him was actually smashed into pieces, and a large hole appeared. He could feel that the true energy in his body had increased by an astonishing amount, including his muscles, bones, tendons, and blood. They seemed to have strengthened a lot. This punch had at least 1,000 kilograms of force. This was the strongest power a martial artist below the third level of the martial vein could produce. I didn't expect a breakthrough to be so easy. It seems that the mountain and river martial spirit is indeed extraordinary. Ling Xiao was very clear that although the effect of the breakthrough pill was not bad, it was definitely not as good as this. In the end, his success was inseparable from the mountain and river martial spirit. When he broke through last night, every time he felt that he was about to fail, there would always be a strange force coming from the mountain and river martial spirit to help him break through the obstacles. In addition, he had been suppressing his breakthrough for so many days. It could be said that his strength was on the verge of erupting. Now that he had released it, it would naturally be easier to break through. However, the third level of the martial vein was just the beginning. Although Ling Xiao was excited, he also understood that the current him was at most a first-rate disciple, like Ling Fei, Ling Feng, and Ling Taizhou. There was still a gap between them and Ling Yixue and Li Xingyun. Moreover, they could break through to the fourth level of the martial vein at any time. The third level to the fourth level seemed to be only one realm, but there was a world of difference. After all, true energy could not be compared to astral energy. His strength had undergone a qualitative change, and all of his attacks had undergone a qualitative upgrade. It could be said that unless a person at the third level of the martial vein could also use astral energy, it was absolutely impossible to challenge a martial artist at the fourth level of the martial vein. The battle between Li Xingyun and the Howling Moon Wolf was very obvious. What happened? Hong Qi heard the loud noise and came over to take a look. He was immediately stunned. I say, child, did something go wrong with your practice? Why did you tear down the house? Grandpa, I've said it before. Now that we have money, we don't need this house anymore. Let's build a new one. The reason why Ling Xiao wanted to become strong, other than not wanting to be bullied, was that he wanted to live a good life. He was tired of living in a house that would leak whenever it rained. Kid, even if we want to build a house, where are we going to live now? Hong Qi smiled bitterly. Don't worry, the Ling family has a house for rent. Let's rent it for a while first. It won't be too late to move back when the house here is repaired. Ling Xiao smiled and said, Grandpa, I'll go find a construction team to repair the house for us. After saying that, he ran out excitedly. He had just broken through to the third level of the martial vein, so he was not afraid of encountering trouble. In fact, deep down in his heart, he really hoped that someone would come looking for trouble. That way, he could also test how strong he was now. Just as he left the Ling family's main gate, someone sneakily turned around and ran away from the corner. Senior Xingyun, that guy came out. The person went into a small forest where Li Xingyun was talking to two other middle-aged men. The two middle-aged men's strength was on par with Li Rui's. They were both at the third level of the martial vein. Okay, I got it. The two of you, here's 100 taels of silver. I don't want him alive, just kill him. After it's done, I'll give you the other 100 taels. Li Xingyun's face revealed a cold smile. Hee, young Masterly, don't worry. We brothers have always been paid to solve problems. We don't know how to do other things, but killing is easy. Ling Xiao left the Ling family and went to the market to find a construction worker. After discussing the matter of building a house, he briskly returned to the Ling family. When he passed by a small forest, he suddenly stopped in his tracks. Friend, since you're here, why are you hiding? He looked at a tree not far away, his gaze sharp and cold. Ha ha ha, kid, you're not bad. You actually noticed us. Looks like you're not weak. A voice sounded, and two people jumped down from the tree. They were both in their 30s and wore black masks. They did not look like Tianfeng City's cultivators, but more like bandits. Black scarf bandits? Ling Xiao recognized the attire of these two people. This was a group of vicious bandits. They usually operated around Tianfeng City, but because the Tianfeng City's 4 great clans were more powerful, they did not dare to enter the city easily. However, their fierce reputation was not bad. It was said that there were a total of 600 to 700 people, led by 13 leaders. They were called the Black Scarf Bandits because they liked to wear black masks. In addition, this group of people had scimitar tattoos on their arms, so it was easy to recognize them. Kid, since you recognize your grandfather, then don't talk nonsense. Take out all the silver you have, and I'll spare your life. Although they accepted Li Xingyun's task, the Black Scarf Bandits were greedy and lustful. They killed people like flies, so they were naturally more willing to maximize their benefits. When the two of them spoke, they had already positioned themselves, not giving Ling Xiao a chance to escape. The clan previously offered a reward of 100 silver taels and 10 contribution points for killing an ordinary black scarf bandit. Since the two of you are here, don't go back. Ling Xiao smiled calmly. 100 silver taels was still a large sum to him, but contribution points were even more important. Normally, only cultivators above the 4th level of the martial vein were qualified to accept clan missions and earn contribution points. Not only could contribution points be used to exchange for items in the clan, it could also raise the status of the clan. For thousands of years, the Ling family had always done this. As long as one could earn 100 contribution points, one could go from a 9th-tier family member to an 8th-tier family member. A 9th-tier family member had no allowance and could be chased away at any time, so they could not enjoy the privileges of the Ling family. An 8th-tier family member was different. Not only did they have a monthly allowance, but as long as they did not commit any major mistakes, they would not be chased away and would have the status of a true Ling family member. Ling Xiao had been a beggar since he was young, so he hoped to have a clan to shelter him from the wind and rain. Although he had suffered many grievances in the Ling family, he had also received many benefits. Naturally, he was unwilling to leave. Kid, you are as arrogant as the rumors say. Kill us and get the reward? I'm afraid you won't be able to. Just like the rumors, Ling Xiao's heart skipped a beat. The only outsiders he had met recently were those from the Li family. Could it be that the Black Scarf Bandits were hired by the Li family to kill him? He was smart enough to figure out the gist of what was going on when the other party let the cat out of the bag. He knew that the Li family would not let him go. He was waiting for the Li family to cause trouble at the Ling family, but who knew that there would be no movement at all. Now he understood. Chapter 28. Big brother, don't talk nonsense with this kid. He should have a lot of money on him. After all, that howling moonwolf can be sold for 30 to 40,000. Yes, kill this kid. He must have money on him. The two black scarf thieves looked at each other with greed in their eyes. They attacked from the left and right, waving the long sabers in their hands as they pounced on Ling Xiao. The joint attack of 3rd-level martial vein cultivators was not bad. The blade tore through the air, bringing with it a strong wind. Reckless things. Ling Xiao smiled disdainfully. If it was before his breakthrough, he would have been a little afraid, but today, he could take these two black scarf thieves and get his reward. When the other party attacked, Ling Xiao's feet moved slightly, and he flew up and landed behind the other party. Kid, don't run if you have the ability. Do I need to run? 100 steps, flying sword. He suddenly raised his hand, and the flying sword on his back shot out like lightning. The clear wind sword turned into a bolt of lightning and directly pierced the throat of one of them. Ah! The scream came to an abrupt end. The black scarf thief stretched out his hand as if to grab Ling Xiao, but his eyes were already unfocused and his pupils dilated. A moment later, he lay on the ground motionless. "You killed my big brother. I want your life." The other person did not run. The long saber in his hand contained true qi as he slashed at Ling Xiao with all his might. However, Ling Xiao did not even need to look at this kind of saber technique. This time he was too lazy to use the 100 steps flying sword technique. He directly moved his feet and flew into the black scarf thief's arms. Then he punched out. A bowl-sized hole appeared on the back of the black scarf thief's heart. You, how is this possible?" The black scarf thief who was killed found it hard to understand. They were both at the 3rd level of the martial vein, so how could the difference be so great? At this time, about a few 100 meters away, a pair of eyes were filled with fear. "If we don't get rid of this kid, there will be trouble in the future. This speed is too terrifying." This person was Li Xingyun. He had thought that even if the 2 black scarf thieves couldn't kill Ling Xiao, they could at least severely injure Ling Xiao. At that time, he would be able to make a move and be absolutely safe. Who knew that the result was far beyond his expectations? Ling Xiao's strength was actually not much weaker than his, and his speed had far surpassed his. If it weren't for the fact that he had advanced martial arts, Li Xingyun wouldn't have dared to go against Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao glanced in that direction and smiled disdainfully. Then he searched the corpses of the 2 bandits. These 2 fellows actually had 200 taels of silver and 2 breakthrough pills on them. This was a profit. After taking out these items and placing them directly into the mountain and river diagram, Ling Xiao carried the 2 corpses like pigs and soared into the air, flying towards the Ling family. Just as he arrived at the Ling family's entrance, the Ling family disciples who used to look down on Ling Xiao all revealed astonished gazes. "Hey, isn't that the black scarf thief?" It's said that the weakest black scarf thief is at the 3rd level of the martial vein. It shouldn't be him who killed them, right? He's only at the 2nd level of the martial vein. That's not right. How did Ling Xiao break through to the 3rd level of the martial vein? This is too fast. It's true, what's going on? These people were very clear that more than 10 days ago, Ling Xiao was only at the 1st level of the martial vein. At that time, anyone could bully Ling Xiao. But now, Ling Xiao was already at the 3rd level of the martial vein. The speed at which he advanced was so fast that it left everyone dumbfounded. There are rumors outside that Ling Xiao entered the Dragon Submission Mountain range a few days ago and happened to encounter a heavily injured Howling Moon Wolf and a ground full of medicinal herbs. I also know that the Howling Moon Wolf was injured by the Li family's disciples, led by Li Xingyun. It's a pity that the Li family lost 3 or 4 disciples, including Li Rue. When they went back to find help, this kid took advantage of them. How shameless! He's the scum of the Ling family. That's right, if I had the materials from the Howling Moon Wolf and those medicinal herbs, I could also break through. I guess the 2 black scarf thieves also took advantage of him this time. Definitely. Hearing the buzzing of these flies, not only was Ling Xiao not angry, but he also revealed a proud smile. In the past, no one would notice him. They would only think of him when they wanted to vent their anger on someone. But today, these people's words were filled with jealousy and envy, which made him feel very proud. Although the incident in the Dragon Submission Mountain range was described in a completely different way, it was fine as long as the Li family didn't come looking for trouble. Now he was only a 9th-tier family member. If the family said to give up, they would give up. If he could achieve good results in the annual competition or obtain 100 merit points, he would be able to obtain the Ling family's protection. He went to the Good Reward and Evil Hall to hand in the 2 black scarf thieves' corpses and received 200 taels of silver and 20 merit points as a reward. Ling Xiao immediately went to rent a house. In the Ling family, as long as you had money, it was actually very easy to rent a good house. since he was only staying for a few months. Ling Xiao might as well rent a big house that cost 100 taels of silver a month. There were all kinds of facilities inside. There was a training room, 2 spacious bedrooms, a living room, a courtyard, a kitchen, and even 2 servants. After paying the money, he received the contract. Ling Xiao returned to the old house. At this moment, the construction team had already arrived and started to demolish the old house, preparing to rebuild it. This new house, Ling Xiao did not plan to make it too big. In any case, he could not live here forever. Besides, it was just him and his grandfather. If it was too big, it would be inconvenient to clean. Therefore, 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a training room would be enough. However, the materials must be good. After discussing the matter of the house, Ling Xiao and his grandfather, Hong Qi, moved the things to the rented house with the help of the construction team. After busying himself with all this, Ling Xiao once again entered a state of seclusion. Having a specialized training room was much better than an ordinary bedroom. At the very least, it was safe and would not be disturbed. In addition, the training room usually had a special structure that was able to withstand relatively strong vibrations. Even a force of over 10,000 jin would not be able to break it. This gave Ling Xiao better training conditions. Closing his eyes, Ling Xiao first entered the mountain river diagram to inspect it. The medicinal herbs were growing very well. The few demon beast cubs were also living a happy life. Ling Xiao was a little embarrassed to treat them as medicinal herbs. Congratulations, your mountain river diagram has been upgraded to level 3. You have received a new card, level 3 farmer, level 3 herdsman, level 3 craftsman. Craftsman? That's a new profession. Ling Xiao opened the craftsman card with interest and looked at the introduction. He could not help but laugh in his heart. This is a group of craftsmen who can do anything. They can create all kinds of weapons, equipment, and tools. As their level increases, their ability will also become stronger. Everything created by this group of craftsmen will have special properties. May I ask if you want to summon craftsmen? There's no hurry. Although Ling Xiao had tens of thousands of silver on him and a howling moon wolf's corpse that he had not sold, building a house would cost money. Moreover, he had not thought about what to let the craftsmen do, so he decided to wait first. What he wanted to do now was to cultivate the ox demon art. He already had the Scarlet Sun art, Bull Strength, Meteor Fist, Qi Explosion art, Qi Recovery art, Fierce Tiger Descends the Mountain, 100 Steps Flying Sword technique, and 2 other intermediate movement techniques that he could devour. Chapter 29. Devour. Devour continuously. Ling Xiao fed all the martial arts he had learned, except for the soaring cloud steps, to the ox demon art. Then he saw the experience of the ox demon art soar. Break through the first level, break through the second level, break through the third level. Finally, it stopped at the 7th level. However, at this time, the name of the ox demon art had undergone a subtle change. It had changed from the original ox demon art to ox demon art aura condensation. Not only had the name changed, even the introduction text had changed accordingly. Ox demon art aura condensation. After the fusion and breakthrough of the ox demon art, it contains all the secrets of the inner force cultivation method, movement technique, martial skill, and secret technique. It is invincible under the 6th level of the martial vein and can still dominate under the 9th level of the martial vein. Cultivation requirements. Cultivation at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein. Thick, true qi, firm will, strong body, able to withstand the baleful aura entering the body. Cultivating this art can produce astral qi. It needs to be tempered by continuous combat. To increase the realm, it still needs to devour cultivation methods. This cultivation method can produce a strong baleful aura and fuse it with the attack. Although it can't cause any substantial damage, it can make the opponent tremble in fear. In terms of will, it has the upper hand. Seeing this, Ling Xiao couldn't help but become excited, not to mention anything else. Just the fact that it could produce astral chi was enough to make him go crazy. Not to mention, not only could this thing produce astral chi, it could also condense baleful aura, causing double destruction to the opponent's body and mind. This was too ruthless. In other words, even if his cultivation couldn't break through to the 4th level of the martial vein in a short period of time, just relying on the ox demon art, aura condensation was enough to contend against a martial artist at the 4th level of the martial vein. He originally thought that after devouring, it would only increase his level. He didn't expect such a fundamental change to occur. The ox demon art itself was a strange art. Previously, it was classified as an intermediate martial art, but in reality, it was much more powerful than an intermediate martial art. Now, after the fusion, it was probably even more powerful than a high-level martial art. It was close to, or even at the level of a top-notch martial art. If that was the case, then wouldn't the Scarlet Sun arts and the 100 steps flying sword technique that he had previously learned be close to, or even reach the level of a top-notch martial art after using the ox demon arts, or a condensation? Transcendent martial arts? Just as Ling Xiao was feeling excited over the fact that he could obtain a top-notch martial art, he suddenly discovered that the mountain river diagram had a brief introduction. Top-notch martial arts are the pinnacle of worldly martial arts. However, above the top-notch martial arts are the transcendents. After opening 9 martial veins and reaching the 9th level of the martial vein, there is still the transcendent realm. The 9th level of the transcendent realm is a whole new realm for martial artists. Ling Xiao was naturally not qualified to know such a thing, so when he saw the words on the mountain and river diagram, he was very shocked. He had always thought that the 9th level martial vein was the peak of martial artists. He had always thought that top-grade martial arts were the best martial arts. However, from the looks of it, there was still the transcendent realm above the 9th level of the martial vein. Above the top-notch martial arts were the transcendent martial arts. Transcendent realm? Transcendent martial arts? What kind of realm was that? What kind of martial arts was that? As his strength increased, Ling Xiao realized that his horizons had been broadened. In the past, he was limited to the Ling family and at most Tianfeng City. The most powerful experts he could see were probably the people from the 4 great families. But now he suddenly understood that he was just a frog at the bottom of a well. It seemed that he still had to work hard. Inside the training room, there was no day or night. Because there were no windows, they were all illuminated by night pearls. Therefore, Ling Xiao did not know what was going on outside. He had already prepared his own rations and told his grandfather, Hong Qi, not to disturb him, because he wanted to go into seclusion. He wanted to comprehend the astral energy. That way, he would be invincible below the 3rd level of the martial vein. And if he encountered a martial artist at the 4th level of the martial vein, he would have the strength to fight. At the very least, he would not be at such a disadvantage. However, how could comprehending astral energy be so easy? The mountain and river martial spirit could help him correct his cultivation method, but it could not help him gain enlightenment. Many things required an epiphany. This was also why so many martial artists talked about comprehension. He did not know about other places, but there were countless martial artists in Tianfeng City. Even if they were at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, there were more than 1,000 of them in the Ling family alone. The total number was estimated to be more than 10,000. There were so many martial artists at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, but there were not many who could truly break through to the 4th level of the martial vein, comprehend the true qi transformation, and condense astral energy. Most people would be stuck at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein for their entire lives, unable to break through. It was common for them to be unable to comprehend astral energy for their entire lives. This was also the reason why geniuses like Ling Taizhou, Ling Feng, Ling Yixue, and Li Xingyun, who were also at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, had high hopes placed on them. Their comprehension was high, and they were young. Naturally, the possibility of them breaking through was very high. But even so, these people had been stuck at this stage for at least a few months. The longest was even a few years, and none of them had broken through. Ling Xiao wanted to break through in a few hours. This plane did not put the true qi transformation into astral energy in its eyes. He had a good habit, and that was, when something couldn't be done, he wouldn't be stuck in a dead end. Instead, he would choose to start from other aspects. The ox demon art had already been upgraded to the ox demon art. Then could the soaring cloud steps also be upgraded? If the soaring cloud steps was upgraded, would it provide more possibilities for condensing astral energy? Thinking of this, he no longer hesitated. He chose the remaining intermediate movement techniques from the cultivation method and began to cultivate. In any case, he planned to go into seclusion this time until the day before the annual competition began. Since he was unable to condense astral energy, improving the soaring cloud steps could also increase his combat ability. Hot blood was very important to a martial artist. However, calmness was equally important to a martial artist. 2 hours later, his soaring cloud steps broke through again, reaching the 3rd step of heaven. He tried to condense astral energy, but he still failed. However, he had a trace of enlightenment. Thus, he continued to improve the soaring cloud steps. For hours later, the soaring cloud steps broke through to the 4th step of heaven. He tried to condense astral energy again, but in the end it still ended in failure. However, during this process, he clearly discovered that a trace of true qi in his body seemed to have reached the level of astral energy. However, he was unable to consolidate it. This meant that his strength was still not enough. At the same time, it also meant that the improvement of the soaring cloud steps was indeed helpful in condensing astral energy. Continue. He was not prepared to give up. When his strength had stagnated at the first level of the martial vein, he had not given up. Now that his strength had increased so quickly, he was even more unwilling to give up. 6 hours later, the soaring cloud steps broke through again, reaching the 5th step of heaven. 8 hours later, the soaring cloud steps reached the 6th step of heaven. At this time, the soaring cloud steps in the real world of the mountain-river diagram finally underwent a qualitative change. Its name became Soaring Cloud Steps. Chapter 30. Soaring Cloud Steps. Flood Dragon is a top-notch movement technique formed from dozens of different movement techniques. When combined with the wondrous Ox Demon arts, condensing aura, it will have a miraculous effect. If it is cultivated to perfection, no one below the 6th layer of the martial vein will be able to match it. Under the 9th layer of the martial vein, it will still be considered a top-notch movement technique. It requires a high-level movement technique as a foundation to continue improving. If combined with aura qi, it can even produce offensive effects. As expected, after the soaring cloud steps reached the 6th layer, it also underwent a qualitative change. Moreover, it seemed to have a special connection with the Ox Demon arts. Now it seemed that the soaring cloud steps and the Ox Demon arts were not separate techniques. They also complemented each other. Aura qi. He had to immediately comprehend aura qi. Whether it was the Ox Demon arts, condensing aura, or the soaring cloud steps. Flood Dragon, they both required aura qi to display their true effects. However, when he closed his eyes again to comprehend aura qi, he had clearly already transformed the true qi in his 3 martial veins into aura qi. But in the moment when he was about to succeed, he failed at the final step. All of the aura qi dispersed and turned back into true qi. Ling Xiao was very puzzled by this. He sat there thinking for a while, then simply stood up. He could not blindly ponder by himself. He had to find someone who understood aura qi and ask. After all, he was a disciple of the Ling family. He believed that the Ling family would not ignore him. After all, the Ling family was a big forest. There were all kinds of birds. Even if someone like Ling Chong appeared, he might not be that kind of person. For example, that martial uncle of the medicine hall was very good. Thinking of this, he gave up on the idea of continuing his seclusion. Then he left the training room. At this time he saw his grandfather, Hong Chi, standing there pacing back and forth. He seemed to be very anxious. "What's wrong, grandfather? Did something happen again?" Ling Xiao asked doubtfully. "Child, you came out of seclusion? It's like this. Just now, that martial uncle of your medicine hall came over to drink tea with grandfather and told me something." Hong Chi said, "Tomorrow, Grandfather Ling will come out of seclusion. All of the disciples have to welcome him. Must I go?" Ling Xiao frowned. In truth, he did not want to join in the fun. There were so many disciples in the Ling clan, so what if he went? Would Grandfather Ling be able to recognize him? That's not it. However, your senior uncle said that every time Grandfather Ling comes out of seclusion, he will give pointers to the disciples. Even if it's just a sentence, it's enough for the disciples to benefit greatly. Hong Chi explained, more importantly, if Grandfather Ling takes a liking to him and takes him in as a disciple, his status will be very high. Looks like I really have to go. It would be a lie to say that Ling Xiao didn't want to become Grandfather Ling's disciple. After all, old Master Ling was the strongest existence in the Ling family. Although he wasn't sure of his exact strength, he was definitely much stronger than the others. More importantly, if she became his disciple, would there still be a problem with resources in the future? After receiving Grandfather Ling's guidance, many things would become much easier for him. Even if he couldn't become Grandfather Ling's disciple, it would still be great if he could gain some enlightenment from Grandfather Ling's guidance. I'll go. Ling Xiao nodded and said, "When will he come out of seclusion?" "Let's go now. He'll probably come out soon." Hong Chi was in a hurry because time was too tight. After Ling Xiao heard this, he turned around and left the courtyard without another word. His speed was so fast that it shocked Hong Chi. At this moment, there were many disciples gathered in the square outside Grandfather Ling's seclusion area. Other than Ling Xiao, this kind of unrated disciple, there were also top disciples from the Elite Hall and Genius Hall. The Genius Hall disciples were usually out on missions at this time, so there were only 2 or 3 of them. The rest were mostly disciples from the Elite Hall and disciples from the Elite Hall. The top 10 experts of the Elite Hall were all here. This was a very rare scene. TSK, it's so lively today. Those 2 are the monsters of the Genius Hall. Although they are ranked around 100, they are both 4th-level Martial Vein disciples who have comprehended astral energy. We can't compare to those monsters, but we can catch up with the Elite Hall disciples. Did you see that? Ling Yixue, who is currently ranked 2nd, just defeated the 3rd and was promoted to the 3rd place of the Elite Hall. Even Ling Feng is here. The one who was defeated is Ling Chen, right? He's here too. He seems to be ranked 6th. Although the disciples present envied the monsters of the Genius Hall, it was difficult to catch up with them. Therefore, they were talking about the top 10 disciples of the Elite Hall the most. At the very least, there was some hope of catching up. There were thousands of disciples in the Elite Hall, all of whom were at least at the 3rd-level Martial Vein. There were even more unranked disciples, all of whom were below the 2nd level of the Martial Vein. In the past, Ling Xiao's intelligence was at the bottom of the list. Therefore, it was normal for others to mock and look down on him. Of course, not many people paid attention to him now. After all, no one knew that he had broken through to the 3rd-level Martial Vein. There was no need to pay too much attention to someone at the 2nd-level Martial Vein. If he couldn't enter the top 10 of the Elite Hall, it wouldn't be easy for him to have fans. Among the top 10 disciples of the Elite Hall, Ling Yixue was the only female disciple. In addition, she was naturally beautiful and terrifyingly powerful, so she naturally attracted a lot of attention. Ling Yihong is here. Ling Yihong, the current chief disciple of the Elite Hall? The Ling Yihong, who is even more powerful than Ling Yixue? Yes, it's him. This person is amazing. He originally came in through the examination and changed his surname to Ling. I didn't expect him to become the chief disciple of the Elite Hall. He's simply a role model for my generation. Exclamations of surprise rang out. Everyone's attention was drawn to it, including the monsters of the Genius Hall. They all looked over. Because the chief disciple of the Elite Hall was extremely likely to be promoted to the Genius Hall and become a little monster. In the future, he might be their opponent. Ling Xiao also followed everyone's gaze. What entered his eyes was a male disciple dressed in simple clothes. Looking at his age, he should be 2 or 3 years older than him. His face revealed a simple and honest smile. This was completely different from the arrogant expressions of the Ling family's disciples. Good fellow, he's worthy of being the chief disciple of the Elite Hall. His appearance looks simple and honest, but his body hides a wild beast. Whoever underestimates this guy will definitely suffer a great loss. Ling Xiao had long heard of Ling Yihong. However, he didn't have the qualifications to talk to Ling Yihong before. Therefore, to prevent himself from being humiliated, he always kept a distance from the Elite Hall disciples. Today they officially met. This was indeed a formidable opponent. At least in his opinion, this Ling Yihong was definitely more difficult to deal with than Ling Feng and Ling Fei. Ling Yihong's appearance didn't only attract Ling Xiao's attention, including Ling Yixue, Ling Feng, Ling Yun, Ling Cheng, and Ling Taizhou. These top 10 disciples who wanted to challenge the chief disciple. Their eyes all revealed a strong fighting spirit. The chief disciple of the Elite Hall. This wasn't just an empty title. It was a real benefit. During the training, one would obtain many unexpected benefits. Everyone wanted to obtain this position, but there weren't many who were truly qualified to challenge it. In the Elite Hall, the top 10 disciples might have the strength to fight, but those who could truly pose a threat to Ling Yihong were probably only the top 5. Of course, Ling Xiao was an exception. He didn't want to reveal too much strength for the time being. Chapter 31. Ling Taizhou is here. He and Ling Feng are the fastest rising disciples in this year's Elite Hall, ranked 4th. TSK, this year's annual competition is going to be spectacular. I wonder if he will be a match for Ling Yihong. First Ling Yihong, second Ling Yixue, third Ling Feng, and fourth Ling Taizhou. These 4 are all here. It seems that Grandfather Ling doesn't want to miss this. Of course, if he can catch Grandfather Ling's eye and be accepted as an inner disciple, then he will definitely soar. Following the crowd's gaze, Ling Xiao saw a gentle youth with a smile on his face. This person's face was humble, but his eyes were filled with fighting spirit and arrogance. Isn't that Ling Chong? Could this Ling Taizhou be Ling Chong's cousin? Ling Xiao knew that Ling Chong had a powerful cousin, but he had never seen him before. However, seeing Ling Chong following behind Ling Taizhou like a shadow, if he still couldn't guess who this person was, then he would be too stupid. Ling Xiao saw Ling Chong. Ling Chong also saw Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao, I didn't expect you to show your face. When Ling Chong saw Ling Xiao, he couldn't control his anger and roared at Ling Xiao. His roar attracted the gazes of many people. What a joke! I am a disciple of the Ling family. Grandfather Ling has come out. Why wouldn't I dare to show my face? Ling Xiao said with disdain. Cousin, this is the bastard who used despicable means to injure me. Ling Chong wanted to rush over, but when he thought of how he lost to Ling Xiao twice, he lost his confidence and hurriedly said to Ling Taizhou, Hee, so your junior brother Ling Xiao. Ling Taizhou revealed a disdainful smile and walked towards Ling Xiao. Senior brother Taizhou. Ling Xiao cupped his hands and said, Hee. Ling Xiao has been making a lot of noise recently. However, when he meets Ling Taizhou, he is still as obedient as a grandson. That's right. This fellow took advantage of the situation in the Dragon Submission Mountain Range, causing our Ling clan to lose face. Our good reputation didn't spread, but our bad reputation did. I don't think so. Are the words of the Li family so trustworthy? It's not that the Li family's words are trustworthy, but normally speaking, with Ling Xiao's strength, there's no other possibility other than taking advantage of the situation. That's true. Today, Ling Xiao is out of luck. Even if he kneels down and apologizes, Ling Taizhou will not forgive him. After all, he beat Ling Chong so miserably. The crowd was in a heated discussion. Generally speaking, they didn't like Ling Xiao. In the end, he still looked down on Ling Xiao's strength. At this moment, even the top 10 disciples of the elite hall had noticed the situation here. Ling Taizhou wasn't Ling Chong. He was ranked 4th in the elite hall. It was impossible for Ling Xiao to defeat Ling Taizhou. No one would believe it. Therefore, more people were gloating. There were also some people who didn't care and just wanted to watch the show. Ling Yihong, who was ranked 1st, seemed to be indifferent to this battle. He closed his eyes and meditated. Ling Yixue was obviously a little worried about Ling Xiao. As for Ling Feng, who was ranked 3rd, he revealed a gloating expression. Ling Feng was very clear about Ling Tieshou's strength. Even he didn't dare to say that he could win for sure. As for Ling Xiao, how was that possible? Ling Yu, who was standing beside Ling Feng, actually clapped her hands and laughed. This Ling Xiao broke through to the 2nd level of the martial vein by taking advantage of the situation. Today, there's finally someone who can teach this little beggar a lesson. She was probably the person who didn't want Ling Xiao to rise the most. Otherwise, not only would she lose face, but when she thought of how she had bullied Ling Xiao, she was afraid that Ling Xiao would take revenge. Ling Xiao, aren't you very powerful? Why are you so obedient today? Are you afraid? Ling Chong laughed. What a pity, what a pity. Today, with my cousin here, your proud days are over. Junior brother, as the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Why don't you kneel down and apologize, and this matter will be over? Ling Taizhou walked in front of Ling Xiao. Suddenly, he released an imposing aura, causing the surrounding disciples to involuntarily take a few steps back. They were afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. Kneel down. Apologize. Everyone could hear that Ling Taizhou was pressuring him. To make a person kneel down and apologize, this was truly an extreme humiliation. How would Ling Xiao deal with it? Would he listen to Ling Taizhou, or would he prepare to be beaten? Senior brother, you're right. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. If Ling Chong is willing to kneel down and apologize to me, I'll pretend that today's matter never happened. Ling Xiao calmly smiled. Suddenly his aura gushed out. The true qi of the 3rd level of the martial vein began to circulate in his body, as if he had suddenly become a different person. Ling Xiao is courting death. That's not right. How did he break through to the 3rd level of the martial vein? Ling Feng was about to ridicule Ling Xiao for acting recklessly when he suddenly felt Ling Xiao's powerful aura, and his face couldn't help but change. Ling Yu, who was standing beside him, couldn't help but tremble. Too fast, too terrifying. How did he cultivate? No wonder he's so bold. So he actually broke through. But doesn't this kid understand that even if they're both at the 3rd level of the martial vein, there's still a huge difference in time between people? Ling Feng seemed to be unbearably angry, so he found an excuse to comfort himself. Senior brother Ling Feng's words are right. Actual combat experience and the accumulation of true qi are very important. There's also the level of martial arts. Don't forget, Ling Taizhou has cultivated a high-level martial art. I was almost scared. It seems like Ling Xiao is just a paper tiger. Did you hear that, Ling Xiao? You're not my match. Today, Grandfather Ling has come out of seclusion. I don't want to make things too ugly for you. Obediently admit your wrongs and apologize. Maybe we can still be friends in the future. Ling Taizhou was also a little surprised by Ling Xiao's strength, but he calmed down after a moment. It had been a long time since he had broken through to the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein. He had cultivated the high-level martial art, giant spirit, divine palm for 2 years. It was still very easy to deal with a person who had just broken through. Don't talk nonsense. You don't have to pretend to be sanctimonious. I hate hypocrites like you the most. If you want to avenge your cousin, just come. It's hard to say who will make a fool of themselves. Ever since he met Li Xingyun, he hated hypocrites even more. On the surface, this group of people pretended to be sanctimonious and righteous, but in reality they were full of evil tricks. Ling Tieshou's expression was extremely ugly. Good. Very good. Since you dare to say that, it means that you're prepared to receive my thunderous wrath, right? You talk too much nonsense. Ling Xiao rubbed his ears and said, Grandfather Ling is about to come out of seclusion. I don't have the time to waste with you. If you want revenge, hurry up and do it. Ha ha ha, interesting. Interesting. Even in the elite hall, no one dares to speak to me like that. Ling Taizhou laughed heartily, revealing a somewhat sinister expression. 10 moves. Within 10 moves, I'll make you kneel here and apologize. I'm afraid you don't have the ability. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Chapter 32. Ling Taizhou coldly snorted, and the aura on his body suddenly became even stronger. Vaguely, one could see the shadow of a giant behind him. This ferocious aura was the true essence of the gigantic spirit Divine Palm. Good aura, much stronger than that trash Ling Chong. Ling Zhao's mind shook. He had to admit that Ling Taizhou was indeed powerful. Standing on the opposite side, Ling Xiao could clearly feel a huge wave of pressure coming at him. This was something that Ling Chong would never be able to do. Gigantic spirit Divine Palm. First move. Ling Taizhou took a step forward and struck out with his palm. His body moved along with it and quickly approached Ling Xiao. The wind from his palm blew towards his face, causing him to be unable to breathe. It was only the first move, but when Ling Taizhou displayed it, it was several times stronger than Ling Chong's. However, Ling Xiao, was no longer the trash of the first level of the martial vein. With a light step, his body quickly retreated. Ling Tieshou's palm was incomparably fierce, and he did not want to meet it head-on. After all, the day of the annual large competition was approaching. There was no need for him to reveal his full strength at this time. As long as he could withstand 10 moves, it would be enough. What a handsome qinggong! Ling Tieshou's qinggong is not weak either. Ling Xiao kept retreating, trying to avoid Ling Tieshou's palm. However, the other party was obviously not to be trifled with. His feet suddenly exerted force, and his speed actually increased by 2 to 3 times, directly pressing forward. Powerful. This is the strength of the 4th place in the elite hall, not bad. Ling Xiao was somewhat surprised in his heart. Although he did not use the mountain and river martial spirit, nor did he use the ox demon art, he only used the soaring cloud steps to dodge the attack. However, to be able to force him to this extent, this Ling Taizhou really had some ability. Sometimes, Ling Xiao even felt that he was not facing Ling Taizhou but a giant. Hee, I'll force you to use all of your strength. Thinking of this, Ling Xiao raised his true qi and activated the soaring cloud step's 3rd step, increasing his speed once again. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. In the end, Ling Tieshou's fist was unable to hit Ling Xiao. It slammed into the ground, shattering the 1-foot-thick stone bricks. Ha ha ha, senior brother Iron Hand, I'm here. Don't make things difficult for a brick. Ling Taizhou was extremely angry. He knew that he would not be able to win with brute force. Therefore, he immediately adopted a different way of fighting. Gigantic Spirit Divine Palm, Inescapable Net. When this move was executed, the entire sky was filled with palm shadows. It was as if there was not the slightest flaw. Ling Xiao couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. He hurriedly increased the rate at which he used his true qi. Using the soaring cloud step's 5th step, his speed increased once more. Thus, a strange scene took place. Ling Taizhou chased after Ling Xiao unceasingly, and the sky was filled with palm shadows. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, was like a crafty swallow darting here and there. If you have the ability, then fight me face to face. What's the point of running around? Seeing the situation, Ling Chong was so angry that he gnashed his teeth. What a joke! Wait until he can touch my clothes, then I'll fight him face to face. My advantage is my movement technique. Why shouldn't I use it? Ling Xiao wanted to create a misconception for everyone now. That was, other than his movement technique being more powerful, everything else was very ordinary. Anyway, that time when he competed with Ling Fei, plus the so-called taking advantage of the Dragon Submission Mountain Range, it was absolutely impossible to not have a good movement technique. Therefore, by doing this, he would definitely be able to make everyone believe him. He actually still has the mood to talk. This guy's movement technique is probably even more powerful than Ling Fei's. Yeah, it's already been 6 moves. Ling Taizhou still hasn't touched his clothes. The disciples in the clan couldn't help but exclaim, "What should we do, Big Brother Feng? How can this little beggar be so powerful?" Ling Yu was clearly a little panicked. What's there to be afraid of? It's just that his movement technique is fast. There are many ways to deal with it. Otherwise, Ling Fei would have long become the #1 in the elite hall. Although Ling Feng said so, he was similarly a little nervous in his heart. Ling Zhao's improvement made him feel like he was being watched by someone. Very uncomfortable. To say who was the most panicked, it was still Ling Chong. He originally thought that as long as his cousin took action, a guy like Ling Xiao would definitely be easily taken down. There was no need for 10 moves at all. But now, 6 moves had already passed, and his cousin didn't even hurt a hair on Ling Xiao. This really made him turn pale with fright. In this kind of chase, it was soon the 7th move. You're very powerful, really very powerful, but it's useless to just know how to dodge. When Ling Taizhou was at the 7th move, he suddenly stopped and then made a strange hand gesture. Big Brother Feng, what is Ling Taizhou doing? That's the secret technique that Ling Taizhou grasped, Instant Strike. Instant Strike? Yes, it can instantly increase speed by more than 10 times. It's specially used to deal with speed-type opponents. I've experienced it before and almost fell under this move. Ling Xiao is definitely finished this time. After Ling Feng finished speaking, he revealed a smile. He really wanted to see the scene of Ling Xiao being smashed to the ground by a palm. Instant Strike, Gigantic Spirit, Divine Palm. As the true qi in Ling Tieshou's body accumulated to a certain extent, his entire body suddenly seemed to fly out. Because the speed was too fast, it looked like it happened in an instant. That's why it was called Instant Strike. Without much time to think, Ling Xiao, who felt a huge threat, once again increased his soaring cloud steps to 6 steps. His speed had also suddenly increased by several times. He didn't hit. Heavens, what kind of movement technique did this Ling Xiao cultivate? This speed is too fast. Could it be a high-level movement technique? Again, Instant Strike with full power. Ling Taizhou didn't give up. Although he used Instant Strike just now, he only used 70% of his strength because he still wanted to follow up with another attack. But because he didn't hit, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and directly used 100% of his strength. Ling Taizhou is really angry this time, but if his attack doesn't hit, his true qi will be exhausted. Then he can only passively take a beating. I think that Ling Xiao has already reached his limit. This move is the 9th move. It should be enough to determine the winner. Soaring Cloud Steps, Flood Dragon. Ling Xiao could feel that if he didn't continue to increase the speed of Soaring Cloud Steps, he would definitely be hit. So he decisively used the movement technique that he had just broken through. In that instant, his entire body seemed to have turned into a flood dragon, and the entire sky was his ocean. He actually used an almost indescribable movement to easily dodge Ling Tieshou's attack. Then he stood steadily on the ground. At this time, Ling Taizhou had already collapsed on the ground, panting and pale. 10th move. You lost. Although Ling Xiao also consumed a lot of his strength, he was much better than Ling Taizhou. He walked to Ling Qieshou's side and lightly patted his face. Elite Hall's 4th place is only SOSO. You. Ling Qieshou's eyes spit fire, but he was helpless. He was actually too impatient. If he didn't continuously use the secret technique, Instant Strike, he definitely wouldn't be like this. But in this world, there was no medicine for regret. A loss was a loss. To be honest, if Ling Tai's Ho was a bit more stable, Ling Xiao would have a hard time winning against him unless he used all his skills. But who told Ling Tai's Ho to try to defeat Ling Xiao in one move? This was called seeking death, wouldn't I? Chapter 33. How did this Ling Xiao become so powerful? Everyone who knew Ling Xiao, those who once mocked and disdained Ling Xiao, at this moment their faces were awkward, dumbstruck, and their hearts were filled with fear. They couldn't believe that Ling Xiao actually won against Ling Tai's Ho, who was ranked 4th in the Elite Hall. How was this possible? Ling Chong was so scared that he directly knelt on the ground. He was afraid that Ling Xiao would come to find trouble with him. At that time, no one here could help him. Don't worry, I'm not interested in trash. Ling Xiao looked disdainfully at Ling Chong, who was kneeling on the ground. This person who used to bully and humiliate him almost every day was now kneeling in front of him. His heart was filled with pride and excitement. Sure enough, when one's strength was strong, they could regain their dignity. Trash! Ling Chong's heart was filled with bitterness. He thought of how he used to say this word to Ling Xiao, but now it was the other way around. Brother Feng, what should we do? He won. He actually won against Ling Tai's Ho. He will definitely come to find me for revenge. Ling, you no longer had the appearance of a proud little princess. Her whole body was trembling, and her eyes were filled with fear. Even though Ling Xiao didn't even look at her, she was still terrified. This was probably what they meant by having a guilty conscience. That's Ling Qieshou's own stupidity. Ling Feng's expression was also a little nervous, but he could always find a reason to comfort himself. If Ling Tai's Ho didn't forcefully use the Instant Strike secret technique and use up all his true qi, the one who lost would definitely be that Ling Xiao. Sister Yu, don't be afraid. I'm about to comprehend the secret of transforming qi into gang qi. Once I condense gang qi, I can kill him in one move. That's right. Brother Feng, you're right. He's only good at movement techniques. He almost doesn't have any offensive moves. Hearing Ling Feng's words, Ling Yu immediately heaved a sigh of relief and hugged Ling Feng's arm tightly. The only person she could rely on now was Ling Feng. If even Ling Feng wasn't a match for Ling Xiao, then she really didn't have anyone to rely on. Ling Yiheng, who had his eyes closed all this time, suddenly opened his eyes. The corners of his mouth revealed a slight smile as he said indifferently, "Yishua, I'm afraid you and I have met a real challenger." In his eyes, in the entire Elite Hall, only Ling Yishua was qualified to challenge him. Now, there was another person who might challenge him, Ling Xiao. Senior brother, you're too polite. I'm still far from your level. However, this Ling Xiao's progress is really fast. If he can master the method of transforming qi into gang, he can really pose a threat to you. Ling Yishua's eyes sparkled. She knew that Ling Yiheng was the only disciple in the entire Elite Hall who had mastered gang qi. Grandfather Ling has come out of seclusion. Just as everyone was talking about Ling Xiao's strength, a voice rang out. That's right, Ling Xiao. The noise immediately stopped. Everyone's attention was focused on the front. That was where old Master Ling was in seclusion. Boom! A powerful aura gushed out from behind the stone door. A well-built old man wearing coarse clothes walked out of the stone room. He was clearly in his 60s or 70s, but when he walked, he was full of vigor. He didn't look like an old man at all. Is this Grandfather Ling? One of the 4 great experts of Tianfeng City, the Ling clan's patriarch. Ling Xiao was also a little excited. He looked up and suddenly activated his mountain river martial soul, trying to see through Grandfather Ling's cultivation. However, what he saw was a ball of blade-like energy. The difference in strength was too great. Even the mountain river martial soul couldn't analyze Grandfather Ling's information. Grandfather Ling's real name was Ling Xiaotian. Back then, he had charged into the Black Scarf Bandits' lair alone and killed hundreds of them. He even killed their leader. Even now, this story was still circulating in Tianfeng City. The Black Scarf Bandits hated Ling Xiaotian, but they didn't dare to touch the Ling clan because of his existence. Ling Xiaotian's gaze suddenly turned to the crowd below the stage. This aura forced many disciples to kneel on the ground. They couldn't control their bodies at all. This invisible aura was too terrifying. Of course, there were also a few people standing there. The two from the Genius Hall still had smiles on their faces. They had already experienced this aura. As long as they had earth energy in their bodies, they wouldn't be affected. Grandpa Ling was testing the strength of his disciples. There were still 4 people standing. One of them was Ling Yihong, who had a calm expression. One of them was Ling Yixue, who frowned. One of them was Ling Feng, who had to use his long sword to support himself. The last one was Ling Xiao. When he felt that his body couldn't take it anymore, the aura was easily neutralized by the mountain river martial soul. Therefore, he was even more relaxed than Ling Yixue. Amazing! Is this the strength of the strongest person in Tianfeng City? When can we reach his level? Don't think about it. Grandfather Ling's strength isn't that easy to reach. Let's just obediently condense earth energy first. Although they were kneeling on the ground, the disciples weren't dissatisfied at all. Instead, they were filled with yearning and anticipation. They were filled with reverence and worship. The 4th level of the martial vein, the earth energy stage, and the title of martial disciple. This was the realm that countless martial artists in Northern Han and the entire world dreamed of. In the past, this kind of expectation was only Ling Xiao's dream. But now, after knowing that there was a 9th level of the transcendent realm above the 9th level of the martial vein, his heart had changed greatly. His mentality had undergone a huge change, and his horizons had been broadened. The 4th level of the martial vein was only a springboard for him, a short-term goal. His current dream was to enter the transcendent realm. Your batch of disciples is the worst batch this old man has ever seen. Ling Xiaotian suddenly opened his mouth to speak. Hee, the old man is doing the same thing again. The 2 disciples from the Genius Hall couldn't help but laugh softly. That's right. We also said the same thing. This batch is really amazing. There are actually 4 people who can withstand the old man's aura. That's right. The old man is actually very happy. Just as they were speaking, they suddenly felt Ling Xiaotian's warning gaze. They hurriedly stuck out their tongues and shut their mouths. Ling Xiaotian continued. As everyone knows, the 9 levels of the martial vein can be divided into 3 stages: awakening stage, earth energy stage, and qi explosion stage. You can obtain the titles of martial student, martial disciple, and martial master. Although his voice wasn't loud, its penetrating power was very strong. Even hundreds of meters away, it could be heard clearly. Grandfather Ling's words could only be considered common knowledge. As long as the disciples of the Ling clan practiced martial arts, they would know. The awakening stage was mainly to train the body, condense true energy, and establish a good foundation to facilitate the cultivation of stronger martial arts. The earth energy stage was when true energy had been condensed to a certain extent and the body could no longer accommodate it. At this time, it was necessary to condense true energy and turn it into earth energy. The earth energy was purer and could injure people through the air. Its power was far beyond true energy. Although there was no fundamental change in the energy in the body and it was still earth energy, the earth energy reserves were far greater than before. At this time, what he had to focus on was a more powerful martial art. The earth energy instantly exploded to attack. With the power of one person, he could easily resist 10,000 people. It was possible to destroy an entire village with a single punch. Many books recorded that a martial master at the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein often single-handedly fought against the enemy. It was normal for him to easily kill 10,000 people. Chapter 34. Since you're here to welcome me out of seclusion, it's not appropriate for me to not give you anything. Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up and they couldn't help but be surprised. If Grandfather Ling wanted to give them something, it would definitely not be something ordinary. Ling Xiao was also excited. It seemed that he had made the right decision to come today. Not only had he wiped away his humiliation and defeated Ling Taizhou, no one dared to underestimate him, but he could also receive a reward from Grandfather Ling. This was too wonderful for words. Take it! Ling Xiaotian suddenly roared. Countless rays of white light shot out from his body and entered the bodies of all the Ling family disciples present. This is a strand of earth energy in my body. The smart ones can use it to comprehend earth energy. The stupid ones can also use it to strengthen their bodies. In any case, it will only benefit you. Finishing his words, Ling Xiaotian turned and left. Old ancestor, why did you do this? It's not worth it to waste so much on those disciples. There's nothing not worth it. I feel that there are a few good seedlings in this batch of disciples. I originally wanted to take them as my disciples, but I have other things to do now. I'm afraid I won't have the time to teach them, give them some benefits, and I hope they can use it to advance. Are you talking about Ling Yihang or Ling Yixue? Those two are indeed promising talents, but Ling Xiaotian smiled. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but his gaze actually swept past Ling Xiao. Then he laughed and left. The annual competition is about to begin. Perhaps there will be a surprise this year. Ling Xiao was pleasantly surprised as he looked at the strand of earth energy in his body. This was what he lacked the most right now. With the analysis ability of the mountain river martial spirit, he could completely analyze the process of the earth energy's formation. Although he couldn't analyze Grandfather Ling's strength, there was no problem with the strand of earth energy. Ling Yihang left with an unfathomable smile on his face. Ling Yixue also left, her face filled with anticipation and anxiety. Ling Feng couldn't wait to leave with Ling Yu. His face was filled with ecstasy. Ling Taizhou also left. Before he left, he touched his body. That was where the trace of earth qi was. Then he looked at Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao, today's humiliation will be washed away in the large competition. Of course, most of the disciples were still confused. They had no idea what the purpose of this strand of stellar energy was. Some people even muttered to themselves that they had come for nothing this time. Grandfather Ling was really stingy. Ling Xiao shook his head. He felt that these people really didn't know how lucky they were. He also turned around and returned home. After informing his grandfather, Hong Qi, he entered the practice room again. Analysis. The mountain and river martial spirit revolved and began to analyze Ling Xiaotian's strand of aura. About 2 hours later, Ling Xiao's face lit up with ecstasy. The mountain river martial spirit had clearly analyzed the entire process of this strand of Gangqi's growth, and even made an image of it. Since I've analyzed it, the next step is to condense my own aura. Ling Xiao smiled and directly activated the Ox Devil art, aura condensation. He began to transform the true qi in his body into aura according to Ling Xiaotian's method. At first, it was a little slow. However, as he became more and more familiar with the process, his speed of transforming qi into aura became faster and faster. His accumulation was already enough. After staying at the first level of the martial vein for such a long time, his true qi had already filled every corner of his body and even his cells. He could feel that when he used Ling Xiaotian's method to transform qi into aura, his true qi was constantly gushing out. This kind of reserve was probably the thickest among martial artists below the third level of the martial vein. It was estimated that only that Ling Yihong could compare to him. The process of transforming qi into aura was very smooth. It could be said that success came naturally. This was mainly because he had tried it many times before. Although he failed at the last step, he had still accumulated experience. This time, through the comprehension and analysis of Ling Xiaoyan's strand of aura, the process was more reasonable. However, the moment all the true qi condensed into aura, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Aura qi was different from true qi. True qi was gentle and soft. Aura qi, on the other hand, was violent and sharp. His body seemed to be torn apart by the aura qi, and the pain was unbearable. Si, pa. Wounds split open on his body, and blood spurted out. If anyone saw this, they would definitely be scared witless. No, if this goes on, I'll die. Ling Xiao suddenly understood that the reason why he was like this was probably because the true qi in his body was too thick. This way, after transforming into aura qi, the amount was naturally much stronger than that of an ordinary person. There was a limit to the amount of aura a martial artist at the 3rd level of the martial vein could withstand, and his had obviously exceeded the limit. Who would have thought that having too much true qi would also be troublesome? Ling Xiao smiled bitterly. However, since things had already come to this, he naturally wouldn't blame himself. He directly took out the Jinchuang medicine and the healing pill from the mountain and river diagram and used them as if they were free, over and over again, within an hour. After experiencing a period of pain that was worse than death, he had almost used up all the Jinchuang medicine and the healing pill. He finally felt that the violent aura qi had been tamed by him. There seemed to be a beast roaring in his body. However, this beast could be controlled by him. Ling Xiao suddenly stood up and let out a wild roar. Countless blood-red energy burst out from his body, hitting the surrounding walls and causing them to make crackling sounds. If this wasn't a practice room, these walls would have collapsed long ago. And that red aura was the result of the blood clots in his body being forced out by the aura qi. If the blood clots were allowed to stay in the body, it wouldn't be a good thing. I did it. I finally succeeded, turning qi into aura. I've already turned all the true qi in one martial vein into aura qi. Ling Xiao was very excited. Although he had only succeeded in turning one martial vein into aura qi, with this success, the next 2 martial veins would be simple. He believed that as long as he condensed all the true qi in 3 martial veins into aura qi, he could smoothly break through to the 4th level of the martial vein. He didn't even need any external help. He was very excited because the dream that was once unreachable had now become so simple. He used to think that as long as he could condense aura qi in this life, he would be satisfied. But now he could have a higher dream. Turning qi into aura was nothing. This was just a small beginning. He spread out his left hand. It was a ball of soft aura, like the steam after boiling water. This was true qi. He spread out his right hand. It was a ball of compact aura like a small tornado. Not only that, each aura was like a sharp blade, full of power. This was aura qi. Although true qi and aura qi were both energy produced by the human body, they were very different. Previously, among the disciples below the elite hall, only Ling Yihong had comprehended aura qi. And now there was one more person, and that was Ling Xiao. Chapter 35. The success of transforming the first martial vein into aura provided Ling Xiao with valuable experience. Therefore, when he condensed the second martial vein, the process became much smoother and smoother. Another 6 hours passed. Not only did he successfully condense the second martial vein, but the aura of the first martial vein was also completely stabilized. When it came to the third martial vein, he encountered a problem, because once the third martial vein was successful, it meant that he would break through to the 4th level of the martial vein. Therefore, the difficulty increased by a lot. It just so happens that the Howling Moonwolf hasn't been used yet. It shouldn't be a problem to exchange it for a few aura qi pills. At that time, the breakthrough will definitely become easier. Ling Xiao wasn't someone who liked to beat around the bush. After all, the annual grand competition was getting closer and closer. The more his strength increased, the more confident he would be in getting a good ranking. Right now, there was not much to gain from cultivating. The Aura Chi pill was a must. This Aura Chi pill was much more expensive than the breakthrough pill and the Chi gathering pill. It was usually used by martial artists who had condensed Aura Chi. Moreover, the refining materials had to be at least level 4, and a demonic beast with Aura Chi. He just happened to have it now. Thinking of this, he got up and walked out of the training room. However, just as he was about to go out, he suddenly thought of a problem. Now that he had succeeded in transforming his Chi into Aura, this was a trump card to get a good ranking in the annual grand competition. He absolutely could not expose it easily. He had to do something to hide his Aura Chi. Just as he thought about it, the Mountain River martial spirit gave a response. The Mountain River diagram showed a list of models that needed to be shown to others. There were models from the first level of the martial vein to the 9th level of the martial vein. Ling Xiao couldn't help but feel happy. In this case, he didn't have to worry about others seeing his strength. He didn't expect the Mountain River martial spirit to have such a thoughtful effect. He thought for a moment and chose the 3rd level of the martial vein without Aura Chi model. He was now at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, a martial artist with 2 martial veins. However, the strength he displayed in front of outsiders was much lower. In this way, he could deceive many people. At the critical moment, it would definitely have a miraculous effect. One had to know that in the world of martial artists, being able to hide one's strength was a very difficult thing to do. Although there were many martial arts that concealed one's strength, it was not easy to cultivate them. Moreover, the effects were very limited. However, the martial artist model that came with the Mountain River martial spirit didn't have to worry about this at all. You don't need to train, you only need to choose. What you show is the strength that the model wants you to show to others. Moreover, as the Mountain River diagram's level continued to increase, its concealment effect would also become better and better. Generally speaking, they could hide from martial artists whose strength was 4 realms higher than Ling Xiao's. For example, if he was at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, then martial artists below the peak of the 7th level of the martial vein would not be able to see through the true strength behind his model. That was more than enough. After adjusting the template, Ling Xiao went to the pharmacy. As expected, the martial uncle of the medicine hall did not notice that he had already condensed Gang Qi. One had to know that this martial uncle's strength should at least be around the 6th level of the martial vein. If he couldn't see through it, then none of the elite hall's disciples would be able to. We don't have any Aura Chi pills in stock. It will take a few days to refine them. No problem, martial uncle. How many Aura Chi pills can this howling moon wolf be exchanged for? Probably 3 or 4 at most. You have to know that 1 Aura Chi pill costs at least 10,000 taels of silver. All right, then I'll have to trouble martial uncle. I'll come back in a few days to get it. Ling Xiao knew that there was no point in being anxious. It seemed that he could only participate in the annual grand competition first. With his current strength, breaking into the top 5 shouldn't be a problem. After leaving the medicine hall, Ling Xiao went back to consolidate his cultivation. Until a day later, he received a registration notice for the annual grand competition. I didn't expect this, child. Back then, Grandpa was worried about whether you were qualified to participate in this year's grand competition. After all, this year's grand competition requires one to be at least at the 2nd level of the martial vein. I didn't expect you to already be at the 3rd level of the martial vein. Han Qi looked at Ling Xiao excitedly. He had watched this child grow up. Now that he was becoming more and more promising, he was naturally happy. Don't worry, Grandpa. This time, I will definitely get a ranking. Don't give yourself too much pressure. After all, there are many disciples at the 3rd level of the martial vein. As long as you can successfully become a disciple of the elite hall, it will be enough. As long as you enter the elite hall, there will be hope in the future. Hong Qi was always unwilling to give Ling Xiao too much pressure. Grandpa, if I don't get into the top 3 this time, I really won't be satisfied. Ling Xiao stuck out his tongue, made a face, and then ran away. This was his true thought. Ling Yixue and Ling Yihong's strength was a bit mysterious. He didn't dare to say that he would win for sure, but he wasn't afraid of others. If he had aura qi and his strength reached the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein and still couldn't deal with a guy like Ling Feng, it would really be a bit embarrassing. There were many disciples who came to sign up for the annual grand competition. There were probably thousands, if not tens of thousands. All of them were at least at the 2nd level of the martial vein. When Ling Xiao arrived at the registration area, there was already a sea of people. Many people were standing there and discussing. Their faces were filled with excitement. The annual grand competition could be said to be the best opportunity for a low-level disciple to make a big leap. If they could get a ranking in the annual grand competition, it was equivalent to having the same opportunity as the disciples of the clan. Because the Ling family expanded their members last year, the number of participants in this year's grand competition is far greater than in the past. There are more people, but the rewards are more plentiful. Have the rewards been announced to the public? Why didn't I know? Stupid. Senior Ming is a disciple of the Genius Hall. This time, he is also a specially invited judge. Naturally, he would know the rewards. Senior Ming, a disciple of the Genius Hall? Ling Xiao walked a lot closer. He also wanted to know what kind of rewards there would be in this year's grand competition. After all, this was related to his future. The disciples of the Genius Hall were generally under the age of 20. Their cultivation had reached the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, and they had condensed aura qi. Obviously, this Senior Ming was such a person. As for the disciples of the elite hall, they were disciples under the age of 20. Their cultivation had reached the 3rd level of the martial vein. Generally speaking, the worst disciple of the Genius Hall was stronger than the best disciple of the elite hall. However, there were often some small monsters in the elite hall. For example, a guy like Ling Yihong. Senior Ming, what kind of rewards are there? Let us know. Senior Ming smiled and said, in this year's Elite Hall Grand Competition, anyone who can enter the top 100 will receive 100 Qi gathering pills as a reward. Those who enter the top 50 will be able to enter the 3rd floor of the library and choose a high-grade martial art. They will also receive a breakthrough pill, a heart protection pill, and a meridian protection pill. Those who enter the top 20 will have an additional chance to choose a high-grade martial art in addition to the previous rewards. They will also receive an additional breakthrough pill, heart protection pill, and meridian protection pill. Hearing this, many people could no longer suppress their excitement. Too extravagant. Just entering the top 100 will give you 100 Qi gathering pills. If you can enter the top 20, it will be even better. 2 sets of high-grade martial arts and 2 sets of breakthrough pills. Chapter 36. Hearing the rewards. Ling Xiao was naturally very excited. However, his excitement was different from others. He was mainly thinking about the Ling family's high-level martial arts. With the Mountain River martial spirit, as long as he entered the 3rd floor of the library, he could bring out all the martial arts there. The limit of 1 or 2 books was meaningless to him. Of course, the rewards of pills were also very good. After all, a set of 3 pills for breaking through required 3,000 silver taels, and 100 Qi gathering pills required 10,000 silver taels. Only a fool would not care. Stop arguing. Let's listen to Senior Brother Ming. What are the rewards for entering the top 10? If you enter the top 10, you can choose 3 sets of high-level martial arts and 3 sets of pills for breaking through. This was not very attractive to Ling Xiao, but for ordinary disciples, an additional set of high-level martial arts and a set of pills was a huge profit. Unfortunately, There are only 10 people who can enter the top 10. No matter what, we have to try. That's right, even if it's just a reward. Are you satisfied with this? You really don't make any progress. Let me tell you, as long as you can enter the top 3, not only will you get all the rewards, but you will also get a top-level martial art and an aura chi pill. Cha! He actually rewarded a top-level martial art. And that aura chi pill, one is worth 10,000 silver taels, right? Senior Brother Ming's words shocked many people to the point that they cried out involuntarily. What did a top-level martial art mean? It meant that it was the best martial art in the secular world. For disciples who did not know about the transcendent realm and did not know about transcendent realm martial arts, a top-level martial art was the best reward. As for the aura chi pill, it required the blood essence of a level 4 demonic beast and other materials to make it into the best aura chi stage pill. Below the 6th level of the martial vein, it was definitely the best. Why did Ling Xiao want the aura chi pill? It was because he wanted to use it to break through to the 4th level of the martial vein. He did not expect that this year's grand competition would have such a reward. Good, the more of these things the better. In any case, after breaking through to the 4th level of the martial vein, he could still use them. As for top-notch martial arts, there was no need to talk about them. They were definitely rare. The reward for 2nd place is about the same as the reward for 3rd place, but there is an additional reward of an aura chi pill. 1st place? There will be a big surprise for the 1st place, right? To be honest, apart from all the rewards before this, the 1st place winner will also receive a mysterious reward. Even I don't know about it. It's said that Grandfather Ling will personally announce it when the time comes. Consider it as leaving some suspense. Senior Brother Ming shrugged. How could it be like this? That's right, it's really tantalizing. The onlookers were going crazy. Not to mention them, even Ling Xiao's heart was itching. The other rewards were already so good, so this mysterious reward definitely wouldn't be too bad. Next, when it was Ling Xiao's turn to register, he shook his head and threw away the confusion in his heart. Let's not think about other things for now. It's better to participate in this year's competition. As long as I can get a good ranking, I'll naturally know what the reward is. 9588. This was Ling Xiao's number plate. He had no choice. Because he was practicing martial arts, he was already late, so his number plate was automatically at the back of the queue. However, this didn't matter. Anyway, when the time comes to participate in the elimination round, everyone would have the same qualifications. However, this number plate gave Ling Xiao a shock. Although he was late, he actually received the number plate 9,588. This meant that there were at least 9,000 people participating in the competition. It was close to 10,000. Previously, it was said that the Elite Hall and Genius Hall disciples had an age limit. They had to be below 20 years old. If they were above 20 years old, they would be appointed and would no longer stay in the hall. Even so, there were still so many people, which was a little surprising. However, most of these people were unrated disciples. It could be said that they were disciples at the bottom. This was because the number of disciples in the Elite Hall had always been around 1,000. In other words, only the top 1,000 disciples could become disciples of the Elite Hall. Otherwise, they would be kicked back to the bottom. Close to 10,000 people competing for the top 1,000 spots. This could be said to be fierce. Moreover, even if one joined the Elite Hall to get better treatment, one had to at least squeeze into the top 100. This made the competition even more intense. As for the Genius Hall, it was even more terrifying. This was because the total number of disciples in the Genius Hall was only 100. They didn't want one more. If someone was promoted to the Genius Hall, then there would definitely be someone sent back to the Elite Hall. This was the cruel competition of survival of the fittest. There was no chance for any tricks. In the arena square, there was a huge stone wall with 200 plates hanging on it. The names were written on the plates. These were the rankings of the Genius Hall, the elite hall, and the bottom disciples. After the annual competition, every year these plates would change. Not only would the order change, even the plates might change. The annual competition was mainly divided into two parts. The first part was the competition between the elite hall and the bottom disciples. The final top 10 would be qualified to challenge the Genius Hall disciples. The Genius Hall disciples would also compete with each other, and the final ranking would be reset. Therefore, the reward that Senior Ming mentioned before wasn't the first place in the elite hall, but the first place in the Genius Hall. On the stone wall, the plate hanging on the first position was very eye-catching because it was made of pure gold. The name on it was impressively Ling Fifan, one of the Tianfeng City's 4 young masters, the most outstanding disciple of the Ling clan under the age of 20. When he was Ling Zhao's age, he had already broken through to the 4th level of the martial vein. He was definitely a rare genius. Ever since he became the first place on the ranking list, no one could shake his position for 3 years. This guy was definitely worthy of being the number 1 genius of the Ling clan. Of course, this year might not be the case. The second place was made of silver and was also eye-catching. It was a disciple called Ling Yin. The third place was made of bronze and was also more eye-catching. It was actually a girl called Ling Shuang. The 4th place to the 200th place were all made of wood and looked about the same. Ling Xiao took a closer look. The top 10 were all occupied by the disciples of the Prodigy Hall. The 11th place was Ling Yihong, the first place of the elite hall. This made him a little surprised. It seemed that Ling Yihong had privately fought with the Genius Hall disciples, which was why he was ranked here. Looking at the 2nd place of the elite hall, Ling Yixue, she was directly behind the 100th place. Ling Feng was 102. Ling Taizhou was 103. However, this ranking was hard to say. After all, the top 5 disciples of the elite hall were all at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein. Once they comprehended the transformation of qi into aura, it was even possible to defeat the Genius Hall disciples. I'm actually on the ranking list. Ling Xiao originally thought that it was impossible for him to enter the top 200. He didn't expect that when he saw the last name, it was actually him. It was impossible to have the same name in the Ling clan because the same name would be requested to change the name. Therefore, it was definitely him. It's probably because I defeated Ling Chong, Ling Fei, and fought with Ling Taizhou, so my ranking was brought forward. In Ling Zhao's opinion, there was no other possibility other than this. Chapter 37. After the registration, there were only 2 days left before the annual grand competition. However, even though there were only 2 days left, no one was willing to waste time. Including Ling Xiao, almost all of the registered disciples began a short period of seclusion, hoping to make some breakthroughs in these last 2 days. After all, many people had accumulated a lot in this year and were probably at the final juncture of breaking through. In addition, the strand of aura qi that Grandfather Ling generously gifted had a huge impact on many disciples. Because of this strand of aura qi, some people's strength had already undergone a qualitative change. Ling Xiao was not the only one. In these last 2 days, Ling Xiao worked hard to condense 90% of aura qi in his 3rd martial vein. There was only 10% left, but he was unable to make any progress. It seemed that he could only wait until the aura qi pill was refined. In any case, even if the grand competition began, it would still take a few days. It was not like there were no disciples who had broken through during the grand competition. The night before the annual grand competition, Ling Xiao stopped all cultivation and planned to have a good sleep. There was nothing better than sleep to replenish one's physical strength. These days of crazy cultivation, he really needed a good rest. Now, soaring cloud step, flood dragon transformation had already been cultivated to the 3rd level. Ox demon art. Aura condensation had also been cultivated to the 3rd level. Ling Zhao's understanding of these 2 martial arts was getting deeper and deeper. He discovered that ox demon art was actually a special inner strength mental cultivation method. It could be used to display all the martial arts that it had devoured, causing these martial arts to undergo a qualitative change. For example, Falling Star Fist would become Ox Demon Art, Falling Star Fiend Fist. 100 Steps Flying Sword Technique would become Ox Demon Art, 100 Steps Baleful Chi Sword. There were also Ox Demon Art, Explosive Chi Technique, Ox Demon Art, Chi Returning Technique, Ox Demon Art, Scarlet Yawn Baleful Chi, Ox Demon Art, Barbaric Bull Baleful Chi, and so on, as long as he increased the level of Ox Demon Art. Aura condensation. The power of these martial arts would naturally increase. There was no need to specially cultivate them. The same martial arts, when displayed in his hands, would have a different power. This was his greatest reliance for victory. In fact, even if he did not use Aura Chi, he did not need to fear ordinary martial artists at the third level of the martial vein. Tomorrow a new legend will be born. Ling Xiao looked at the moonlight outside, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. Meanwhile, within a side courtyard of the Ling clan's main residence, under the moonlight, a man in snow-white robes appeared. His long sword moved with the wind, and with a thrust of his sword a huge boulder in the distance was shattered into pieces. The sword light was like lightning, its power unparalleled. If this sword had pierced the howling moonwolf that had once caused the Li family disciples to suffer a great loss, then the howling moonwolf would probably have been injured as well. It looked like a simple sword, but its power was not inferior to Li Xingyun's Gale sword. It could be said that this sword strike was almost invincible against a martial artist at the third level of the martial vein. Feng! Now that you've basically comprehended the true essence of the Wind-Whisk Willow Sword, it was not in vain for your father to shamelessly ask for this high-grade sword technique for you. People who can cultivate a high-grade martial art to 100% power at the peak of the third layer of the martial vein are as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. You can be proud. Standing a dozen meters away from the youth was a middle-aged martial artist in his 30s. Seeing that the youth's sword technique had reached the large success stage, he could not help but reveal a gratified smile. The youth was the third-ranked disciple of the elite hall, Ling Feng, and the middle-aged man was his father. Not only that, your son is about to comprehend the secret of transforming Qi into Aura Qi. If he can break through in battle, then even Ling Yihong will not be in my eyes. Ling Feng said with a smile, "Let's not talk about Ling Yihong, but that kid called Ling Xiao, you can easily defeat him." The middle-aged man said, "Ling Xiao? That little beggar? Father, do you really think your son will put him in my eyes?" Ling Feng said disdainfully, "Your son's goal this time is to be in the top 10 of the Stonewall rankings. Ling Xiao is nothing." "Ha ha ha, you're right. It's your father who has fallen behind." If it was said that Ling Feng had a trace of fear towards Ling Xiao when he was registering, then today, after he had completely cultivated the Wind-Whisking Willow Sword to the large success stage, he no longer put Ling Xiao in his eyes. In another part of the Ling clan, in a wooden hut, Ling Yixue's entire body was covered in sweat. In her bright eyes, there was a trace of excitement. There was a person sitting on the windowsill, smiling at her. "Yixue, I didn't expect you to condense Aura Qi before the start of the large competition. Now, in the elite hall, except for that Ling Yihong, there is no one else who can be your opponent. Ling Fifan, don't call me that intimately. I have no relationship with you. And don't forget, in this large competition, the top 10 of the elite hall have the qualifications to challenge the Genius Hall disciples. At that time, just don't lose to me." The person sitting on the windowsill was actually one of the 4 young masters of Tianfeng City, Ling Fifan, the number 1 genius of the Genius Hall. "Ha ha ha, I'm waiting." Ling Fifan laughed and stood up. With a deep gaze, he said, "The only one who can defeat me is probably you. Who asked me to like you? Don't be too complacent. Ling Yihong is definitely your biggest threat this time. Yes, that kid Ling Yihong is indeed not bad. I don't doubt that he can enter the top 3. But if he wants to defeat me, it's still too early. Ling Fifan smiled faintly. It seems like you have done a very detailed investigation on Ling Yihang. But there is another person who you might be surprised about. Ling Zhao's figure appeared in Ling Yishue's mind. Who? Ling Yihang asked. After the large competition, you will know. This person may be a strong competitor to you, to me and to Ling Yihang. Oh, I didn't expect Yishue to have such a high evaluation of this person. I am getting more and more interested. All right, let's go back. Yishue, do your best. As long as you can enter the top 10 of the Elite Hall, you can enter the Genius Hall competition. After speaking, Ling Fifan's figure moved slightly and disappeared into the night sky. Ling family, Lord Jiu's mansion. It was luxurious and rich. Ling Jiu's face was very gloomy at this time. Chong, I know you have no hope, but this time you must break into the top 50. Otherwise, don't ask me for this and that in the future. Dad, not only will I break into the top 50, but I will also take that Ling Xiao as a sacrifice. Ling Chong gritted his teeth and said. Ling Jiu ignored him and looked at Ling Taizhou. Taizhou, you lost to Ling Xiao last time because you were too careless and conceited. This time, you have mastered the gigantic spirit, Divine Palm. You have to get back your face. Understood, Lord Jiu. Ling Taizhou gritted his teeth. As long as I meet Ling Xiao, I will let him have a taste of what it is like to humiliate my people. On the day of registration, his gigantic spirit Divine Palm had not been cultivated to full power. But now, with the help of the medicine, he had reached that level, not only to enter the top 10, but more importantly, to wash away his shame. In a secret practice room, Ling Yihang suddenly opened his eyes. I broke through. I finally broke through. 4th level martial vein. Ling Yihang had broken through to the 4th level martial vein at the critical time. The trace of Qi shield from Ling Xiaotian had helped him a lot. Ling Fifan, it's time for your number 1 position to be changed. Among the disciples of the Genius Hall and the Elite Hall, Ling Yihang only had eyes for Ling Fifan. Chapter 38. This night was destined to be a restless one. Countless disciples of the Ling family rubbed their palms and secretly prepared to fight for the best opportunity to make the leap. The upper echelons of the Ling family were also paying close attention to everything. This was the effect they were looking for. Only in this kind of atmosphere could the most outstanding disciples be born. The horn of battle had already sounded. The brave warriors were sharpening their swords. The next morning, on the arena square, even though the sky wasn't completely bright yet, there were already many people gathered here. There were disciples of the Ling family who were so excited that they couldn't sleep well. There were also the upper echelons of the Ling family who came early in the morning to prepare the arena. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, was rather late. He had a good night's sleep last night. By the time he reached the arena, the sky was already bright. He realized that the top 10 disciples of the Elite Hall were all present. As for the disciples below the top 10 of the Genius Hall, they had all rushed over. However, these people only had one goal, and that was Ling Yihang. At most, there was also Ling Yishue. After all, in their eyes, only these 2 people could pose a threat to them. Ling Xiao yawned and leaned on the stone wall to observe the situation on the arena square. There were about a dozen battle stages. He didn't count them carefully, but there were too many participants. These stages were necessary, especially in the elimination round, where there were close to 10,000 people fighting. Without these stages, who knew when the competition would end? The stages were all built with special materials. Unless one had astral energy, and the power of their moves were too strong, it was impossible to break them. The so-called elimination round was actually to select the top 10 disciples of the Elite Hall and the bottom disciples. Then, these top 10 disciples would mix with the 100 disciples of the Genius Hall for the real competition. The reason was simple. The disciples of the Genius Hall were too strong. The majority of the disciples of the Elite Hall and the bottom disciples weren't enough. If they were all mixed together, it would be a waste of time for the disciples of the Genius Hall. Ling Xiao looked at the dozens of disciples of the Genius Hall. Sure enough, they were all at the peak of the third level of the martial vein and had condensed astral energy. However, there were differences in the degree of condensing astral energy. The weakest one had only formed 20% of his first martial vein's earth energy. The strongest of them had already formed the third martial vein and 50% of his earth energy. Of course, this was because Ling Fifin and the others hadn't arrived yet. Otherwise, the strength of these guys would be even more terrifying. The majority of the Genius Hall's disciples seemed very relaxed. After all, there were too few people in the Elite Hall who could pose a threat to them. At this time, they were pointing and gossiping about the Elite Hall and the lower-level disciples. I heard from our hall master that the quality of this year's Elite Hall's disciples is not bad. I reckon that there will be 5 or 6 people who will pose a threat to our Prodigy Hall's disciples. I think it's only Ling Yihang and Ling Yishui. The rest are not worth mentioning. That's true. That guy, Ling Yihang, has long been ranked 11th on the Stonewall rankings. He has already consecutively defeated several disciples of our Prodigy Hall. He might even pose a threat to young Master Fifin. Humph, Ling Yihang is nothing. Only I can defeat young Master Fifin. Suddenly a rough voice rang out. Someone actually jumped directly onto the spectator stand from tens of meters away. Ling Zhan. It's the 4th-ranked Ling Zhan from the Genius Hall. This person's arrival was really too eye-catching. In addition, he was already very famous, so it caused waves of excitement in the crowd. Ling Xiao also looked at this Ling Zhan. He was close to 2 meters tall, and his body was very strong. His whole body seemed to be filled with terrifying strength, and his muscles were simply frightening. In fact, this was all on the surface. When Ling Xiao used his mountain river martial spirit to analyze this guy, he couldn't help but frown. He was actually at the 4th level of the martial vein, and his earth energy had condensed to the level of 90% of the 3rd martial vein. As expected of the 4th-ranked Prodigy Hall, this was too awesome. Ling Xiao couldn't help but feel a little nervous. If the 4th-ranked Prodigy was already like this, then what about the top 3? He already knew that the Prodigy Hall's disciples were very terrifying, but when Ling Zhan appeared, he still felt a little surprised. Below the 4 young masters, there are people like Ling Yun, Ling Shuang, and Ling Zhan. It should be said that they are at the level of the quasi-young masters. Quasi-young masters, Sai, we can't even compare to the quasi-young masters, let alone the Tianfeng cities for young masters. Ling Fifin, Ling Yun, and Ling Shuang haven't arrived yet. I guess they don't have much interest in the Elite Hall's battle. Yeah, only this Ling Zhan is more lively. Otherwise, with his status, there is no need for him to come. Ling Yihang, who was sitting on a stone stool and eating, only glanced at Ling Zhan indifferently. No expression could be seen on his face. He still lowered his head and ate his food. Ling Yishui's face was slightly ugly. Ling Feng and Ling Tieshou's faces were even more gloomy. Facing this Ling Zhan, they had no chance of winning. Ling Xiao clenched his fist. The stronger the opponent, the more interesting it is. To be honest, ever since he obtained the Mountain River martial spirit, he hadn't fought with his full strength. After comprehending the soaring cloud step and demon ox art, he hadn't really fought with anyone. When facing Ling Taizhou, he just dodged. If I get serious, even I am scared. I don't know how far I can go before breaking through the 4th level of the martial vein. All right, quiet down. The annual competition's elimination round is about to begin. We will decide the top 10 from the 10,000 Elite Hall disciples. A voice filled with authority and dominance rang out. This person should be one of the upper echelons of the Elite Hall, but Ling Xiao didn't recognize him. When the competition started, everyone quieted down. Choosing 10 people out of 10,000 was a very cruel competition. Of course, even if they couldn't enter the top 10, as long as they could enter the top 1,000, they could still stay in the Elite Hall. Thus, even though there were many disciples participating, everyone had different goals and objectives. Some simply wanted to enter the top 1,000. Some wanted to get a place in the elite hall. And some wanted to enter the genius hall through this competition. Now, the first round of the competition begins. Listen to the number and enter the corresponding stage. If you don't appear within the time limit, you will be considered to have forfeited. The competition's format was actually very simple. One round to determine the winner. The loser would leave and the winner would stay. Only when there were 1,000 people left would the format change. According to the rankings on the stone wall, the 1,000 people would be divided into 10 groups. And these 10 groups would be arranged in a zigzag pattern. For example, the first ranked Ling Yihang would be in the first group, the second ranked Ling Yishue would be in the second group, and so on. The 20th ranked disciple would be placed in the 10th group. The advantage of this was obvious. It would allow the strongest disciples to stay until the end and not face each other early. In these 10 groups, there would be 100 people in each group. In the end, one person would advance to the finals. In other words, they would participate in the competition with the Genius Hall disciples. However, that would be after there were 1,000 people left. Chapter 39. With tens of thousands of people in the elimination round, the audience's attention was usually on the main characters. Novel. Law according to the rules of the competition, if you lose 2 matches in a row, you will be automatically eliminated. If you lose more than 10 matches, you will be automatically eliminated. So if you lose 1 match, you still have a chance. But if you lose 10 matches in a row, you will still be eliminated. If you can win 100 matches in a row, you will automatically advance to the top 1,000 list. This rule was listed separately. It was mainly to protect the top disciples who suddenly appeared. 100 matches in a row was enough to prove their strength. They did not need to continue participating in this kind of elimination round because it would seriously exhaust their stamina. So the audience paid the most attention to these people who could win consecutive matches. When the competition started, the list of opponents was randomly selected. In other words, before the competition started, no one knew who their opponent would be. Many people secretly hoped that they would not meet the top 200 on the Stonewall list. Otherwise, the possibility of losing would be higher. When the competition started, the audience would pay the most attention to the elite disciples ranked 20 to 30. After all, if the top 10 did not participate in the competition, they would be the last ones to win consecutive matches. But after 20 matches, there were only 2 people left who still had a winning streak. One of them was Ling Xiren, who was ranked 20. His battles could be said to be extremely smooth. Almost every opponent was defeated by him in one move. They did not have the strength to fight back at all. The referees of this year's competition were not ordinary people. They were all experts from the Ling family. They were also experts who had presided over many years' competitions. Their foresight was very accurate. Who won and who lost could often be seen in an instant. So sometimes the battle did not need to continue for too long. When they felt that it was about time, they would call for a stop. Ling Xiren is too strong. I don't know if he has a chance to enter the top 10 this time. That's definitely possible. You probably don't know yet, but Ling Xiren once challenged someone in the top 10 in private and won. No wonder he is so strong. But who is the other person who won consecutive matches? Why have I not seen him before? That person, I have heard of him. He is called Ling Xiao. Recently, he has risen like a comet among the bottom disciples. But winning 20 matches in a row is also very surprising. That's right. One of the people who won 20 matches in a row was Ling Xiren, who everyone was looking forward to challenging the top 10. The other one was Ling Xiao, a true dark horse. It's his turn again. Let's go and watch the show. What's so great about this guy? If we meet him in the future, we'll be on our guard. Go. Although there were many matches going on at the same time, the only matches that received the most attention were Ling Xiren and Ling Xiao's matches. This was because the two of them were the only ones left with the possibility of breaking the 100-game winning streak rule. 21st round. Number 9588 versus number 6590. Ling Zhao's figure flashed, and he appeared on the martial arts stage. He did not deliberately conceal his movement technique. After all, the news had already spread. Many people knew that his movement technique was outstanding. It was impossible to hide it. His opponent was only a martial artist at the peak of the second level of the martial vein. Facing Ling Zhao, his aura had already weakened by 30%. Vigorous fist. His opponent roared angrily, as if trying to boost his morale. What he used was a middle-grade fist technique. Its power was not bad, but it was not enough to face Ling Zhao. Go down! Ling Zhao only took a step forward. Then, like a raging bull, his fists turned into two horns. He directly blasted his opponent off the stage. Hey, is that the barbaric bull's strength? That's right, it's the basic martial art, the barbaric bull's strength. But why is it so powerful? Number 9588 wins. 21 consecutive wins. The judges' eyes were filled with surprise. It was not only because Ling Zhao had won 21 consecutive matches. More importantly, in these 21 matches, Ling Zhao defeated all his opponents in one move. What was even more ridiculous was that he actually used the basic martial art, the barbaric bull's strength. He only dares to use the barbaric bull's strength against opponents at the second level of the martial vein. One could not blame others for saying so. The key was that it was unknown whether it was a coincidence or not. Ling Zhao's luck in these 21 matches was really good. The strongest was only at the second level of the martial vein. Those who could not bear to see Ling Zhao's strength would naturally find all kinds of reasons to slander him. Number 9588 versus number 3489. After a short break, the 22nd round began again. This time his opponent was still at the peak of the second level of the martial vein. Therefore, Ling Zhao did not hesitate at all. After the judge shouted for the start, he took the initiative to attack. It was still the barbaric bull's strength. It was still only one move. The opponent was still blasted off the stage. It was not that he was ruthless. It was mainly because of the rules. Only when the opponent was knocked off the stage or admitted defeat would the match be considered over. In other words, even if the judge made a judgment, it was only a reference. If the contestant did not agree, they would still have to continue the match. In order to avoid trouble, he simply sent them flying with a punch. However, the disciples who were knocked off the stage by him were not seriously injured. The current him was already very skilled in controlling his strength. It's nothing. He was just lucky. The opponent is actually at the second level of the martial vein. Can't he send someone at the third level of the martial vein? Among the onlookers, there were still some who were not convinced. Number 9588 wins, 22 consecutive wins. The judge seemed to be a little numb. He was no longer as shocked as before and only announced the result mechanically. However, what made those who were waiting to see Ling Zhao make a fool of himself was that in the next 10 matches, Ling Zhao still did not meet a single martial artist at the third level of the martial vein. After all, there were too many people, and most of them were martial artists at the second level of the martial vein. Number 9588 wins. 32 consecutive wins. Brother Zirin, Ling Zhao's luck is too good. You've already met 2 martial artists at the third level of the martial vein, but he hasn't met a single one. Below the stage, there were more people who came to watch the show during the break. 2 of them were Ling Zirin, who also maintained a winning streak, and Ling Yu, who had lost 2 matches so far. The one who spoke was Ling Yu. This woman was really good at seducing men. She hooked up with Ling Zirin so quickly. Don't worry, little sister Yu. As long as I have the chance to meet this Ling Zhao, I will definitely take care of him for you. Ling Zirin said coldly, but this guy's luck is better. If he meets a martial artist at the third level of the martial vein, he might be directly eliminated. Maybe I won't have the chance to teach him a lesson. It was obvious that Ling Xiren was contemptuous of Ling Xiao. Although he knew that Ling Xiao had won against Ling Tai's Ho, many people thought that the battle was just an accident. Some people even said that Ling Tai's Ho deliberately pretended to be weak in order to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger in the annual large competition. Number 9588 against number 140. That's Ling Hu. Ling Hu, ranked 140th in the elite hall. Third level of the martial vein. This is going to be a good show. Just as Ling Xiren felt bored and was about to go back and wait for his opponent to appear, the situation finally changed. Ling Hu, teach that pretentious prick a good lesson. Yes, that kid is too arrogant. Ling Xiao used basic martial arts in order to save his true chi. He did not expect that these people would think that he was pretending to be pretentious. This was really a bit unjust. However, it was clear that many people were already unhappy with him. After all, a little beggar suddenly became a famous person. Many people felt that it was unfair. Chapter 40. Ling, who was just like his name. He had a ferocious appearance and was about 9 meters tall. He wasn't much taller than Ling Zhan, and his body was very muscular. Standing opposite of Ling Xiao, he didn't look like a 15 or 16-year-old kid at all. Instead, he looked like an uncle. He didn't even need to make a move. Just by standing there, the aura of a third-level martial vein was enough to make martial artists below the second level tremble. Come on. Strength doesn't come from talking. Ling Xiao stood there and beckoned. A mere third-level martial vein martial artist was no threat to him at all. Arrogant. If you still dare to use basic martial arts, I'll let you know how powerful I am. Ferocious tiger fist. Ling Hu roared and pounced towards Ling Xiao. His body seemed to have turned into a fierce tiger, and his aura was very strong. Although it was also an intermediate martial art, it was much more powerful than the intermediate martial arts used by the second-level martial vein martial artists that Ling Xiao had met before. In the explosion of true energy, the power of Ling Hu's fist had already reached its peak. The speed and instantaneous explosive power were extremely terrifying. No wonder you have the confidence to end my winning streak. The power of this fist is indeed not bad. I reckon that even an ordinary third-level martial vein martial artist wouldn't dare to face you head-on. In the face of the attack, Ling Xiao actually made an attacking motion while still speaking. But meeting me is destined to be a tragedy for you. Go down. Barbaric Bull's strength. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Xiao punched out again. The arena was like a battle between a fierce tiger and a barbaric bull. Damn, this kid is too bold. Facing Ling Hu's ferocious tiger fist, he actually used the basic martial art barbaric bull's strength? Humph. He's courting death. Boom. This was definitely a collision between strength and strength. A figure directly flew out and then fell heavily to the ground. Ling, whose sturdy body, which weighed at least 180 kilograms, landed on the ground with his but facing the ground. His nose was bleeding from the impact. 2 of his front teeth were also knocked out. Ah, how was this possible? The crowd's jaws dropped to the ground. Number 9588 wins. 33 consecutive wins. After the referee announced the result, many people came back to their senses. This was too monstrous. Another move. Another foundational martial art. 33 consecutive victories. Many people who looked down on Ling Xiao immediately shut their mouths. Their faces had been slapped painfully. Didn't they say that Ling Xiao didn't dare to use the barbaric bull's strength against a martial artist at the third level of the martial vein? In the end, not only did he do it, he even won with a single move. Go. Ling Xiren left with a gloomy face. He only wanted to meet Ling Xiao as soon as possible and teach Ling Xiao a lesson. Otherwise, Ling Xiao's reputation would soon surpass his. Brother Xiren, that Ling Xiao isn't easy to deal with. I'm afraid we won't be able to win." When Ling Yu said these words, the corners of his mouth slipped into a sly smile. He was clearly trying to sow discord. Don't worry. That Ling, who is only ranked 140th and has only learned intermediate level martial arts. I'm ranked 20th and have learned advanced level martial arts. Ling Xiren was indeed enraged. Men, even if they were only 15 or 16 years old, they wouldn't want a beautiful girl to say that a man was stronger than them. What's more, Ling Xiren really didn't find Ling Xiao's strong points. The reason why Ling Xiao was able to win consecutively was because his opponents were too weak. Ling Yu smiled and said, "All right, Brother Xiren, don't be angry. Let's continue our own competition. There will always be a chance to meet." Following this, more and more people began to pay attention to Ling Xiao. 34 consecutive victories, 45 consecutive victories, 60 consecutive victories, 90 consecutive victories. Miracle. It was definitely a miracle. The judges were all shocked. Until the 90th round, because many of the weaker disciples had already been eliminated, the rest were basically martial artists at the third level of the martial vein. For a period of time, Ling Xiao had consecutively met 10 martial artists at the third level of the martial vein. He actually easily won all of them in one move. Moreover, he used the foundational martial arts of the barbaric bull's strength. Perhaps he was provoked by Ling Xiao. On the other side, Ling Xiren's attacks suddenly became ruthless. So much so that until the 90th round, most of the disciples actually took the initiative to admit defeat after going on stage. So Ling Xiren won even more easily. Both of them had 90 consecutive victories. Up until now, they hadn't met. In fact, according to the judges' thoughts, they didn't really want these two to meet, because they were all the cream of the crop among the tens of thousands of people. If they could smoothly enter the next round with 100 consecutive victories, it would be a good thing. During the interval between meals, the people discussed the most were still Ling Xiao and Ling Xiren. "Senior brother, that Ling Xiao has always used foundational martial arts to defeat his opponents in one move. It's clean and efficient, and that Ling Xiren just used his strength to force many people to admit defeat. If these two people were to meet, who do you think will win? In my opinion, Ling Xiren has a higher chance of winning. After all, Ling Xiren knows high-level martial arts. And no matter how good Ling Xiao's foundational martial arts are, it's still only foundational martial arts. It's useless against Ling Xiren. Yes, that's the truth. Senior brother is indeed wise. I also think that Ling Xiao is not bad, but it's a pity that he didn't learn any good martial arts. I don't think so. I think that Ling Xiao has a higher chance of winning." At this moment, Ling Xiao's fans had already appeared. "Why do you say that? I saw the battle between Ling Xiao and Ling Taizhou that day. The Qigong movement technique that Ling Xiao used is something that even Ling Yixue can't compare to. And in this elimination round, Ling Xiao hasn't used that movement technique yet. You're not right. Ling Xiren hasn't used his own high-level martial arts until now. He's always been using middle-level martial arts. The battle on the stage was heated, and the debate below the stage also began. In the past, Ling Xiao didn't have much status in the Ling family, and it was impossible for him to have any supporters. However, the 10,000 people elimination competition this time had given him a few more supporters. These people's experiences were mostly similar to his. They were all recruited from outside and were also bullied. So in their eyes, Ling Xiao was simply their hero model. After eating, they rested for about an hour before the competition resumed. At this time, the sky was gradually darkening. It was estimated that when Ling Xiao completed his 100th victory, the day's matches would be over. The rest of the matches would continue tomorrow. Martial artists were also human. They also needed to rest. However, what surprised him was that in the 91st match, he actually met Ling Yu, this girl that he once hated and loved. But now, there was only disappointment and disdain. Standing on the stage, Ling Xiao looked at Ling Yu indifferently. You didn't expect it, right, Ling Yu? The little beggar that you bullied in the past has now become your nightmare. Hee hee, big brother Ling Xiao, don't make it sound so bad. Speaking of which, I was still young in the past. I didn't know how to dote on little beggars. I was a little unruly, but I didn't do anything too excessive. Ling Yu giggled as she looked at Ling Xiao. She actually walked over leisurely, completely unguarded. What's going on with these two? This is a martial arts competition, not a chat. Why are they still chatting? The people below were a little unhappy. The actions of the two people on the stage made them feel bored. Is that so? You really think I don't know? That time the one who poisoned the food and killed several of my beggar clan brothers, wasn't it you? Hee hee. Big brother Ling Xiao really likes to joke. How could I do that kind of thing? Do you think I'm that kind of person? Ling Yu walked to Ling Xiao's side with a smile. Then, she actually reached out to grab Ling Xiao's arm. Her eyes shone with a strange light. Chapter 41. Secret Technique. Soul Assimilating Technique. Ling Yu hugged Ling Xiao's arm and was talking with a smile. Suddenly, her eyes flashed with a strange light. Lottie's sudden change shocked the onlookers. Many people knew that there was such a secret technique in the library that could instantly confuse a person's mind and make them lose their ability to think. However, there were only a few who actually cultivated it. This was because this secret technique could only be cultivated by women. Moreover, it had to be a naturally seductive woman. They didn't expect Ling Yu to actually succeed in cultivating it. Ling Xiao is finished. At such a close distance, with the soul assimilating technique shocking his mind, there was no possibility of resisting. To be honest, even the judges felt that Ling Xiao lost unjustly. If Ling Xiao had made his move earlier, it wouldn't have ended up like this. This woman was too scary. She was so good at seducing men at such a young age. What would happen when she grew up? Humph. However, in the next moment, an unbelievable scene appeared. The one who was knocked off the stage wasn't Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao coldly snorted. Ling Yu screamed as if she had seen a ghost. Then she crazily jumped off the stage and squatted on the ground, trembling. Ling Xiao was also a little scared. If he hadn't cultivated the demon ox art, aura condensation, and the baleful aura in his body had the effect of restraining this kind of secret technique that disturbed the mind, he would be in danger. However, Ling Yu could be considered to have brought this upon herself. After such a blow, she probably wouldn't dare to find trouble with Ling Xiao for a short period of time. Number 9588 wins, winning 91 matches in a row. The judges were stunned for a long time before they remembered to announce the result. Because at this time, even the judges didn't understand what had just happened. Ling Xiao didn't even make a move, and Ling Yu actually lost inexplicably. Ling Xiao, you dare to hurt my sister, you. You and I are irreconcilable. Unknowingly, the seated contestant Ling Feng had already appeared beside Ling Yu. Looking at the trembling Ling Yu, he roared, "Is it worth it for this kind of woman?" Ling Xiao said indifferently, "That's none of your business. As long as we meet, I will definitely make you pay the price." Ling Feng said angrily, "Is that so? I'm afraid you don't have that ability." Ling Xiao smiled faintly and turned to leave. The current Ling Feng was no longer his target. He was more interested in the top 10 of the Prodigy Hall, as well as Ling Yihong and Ling Yixue. Brother Feng, that guy was a devil. Devil, you must avenge me, avenge me. Ling Yu was like a frightened rabbit, tightly grabbing onto Ling Feng's arm as she kept muttering, "Don't worry, I will." Ling Xiao did not take Ling Feng's words to heart at all. His battle was still ongoing. 92 consecutive victories, 93 consecutive victories, 94 consecutive victories. Ever since the match where he scared Ling Yu away, no one dared to fight against him for 3 consecutive matches. The 3 of them chose to give up. None of them were idiots. Since they couldn't win, Why waste their energy? After all, it wasn't like they would be eliminated after losing a match. Perhaps it was because of Ling Xiao's provocation. Ling Xiren's attacks became even more ruthless. There was almost no one who was willing to fight against Ling Xiren. Therefore, Ling Xiren successfully relied on his opponent's forfeiture to complete the great achievement of 94 consecutive victories. After achieving 100 consecutive victories, I can go rest. I wonder if the medicinal hall has successfully refined the Orachi pill. I'm really looking forward to it. At this moment, Ling Xiao's mind was no longer on the match. He was looking forward to the breakthrough after obtaining the Orachi pill. If he wanted to go further, the safest way was to break through to the 4th level of the martial vein. 95 matches, another forfeit. 96 matches, another forfeit. From the looks of it, there was no doubt about this 100 consecutive victories. Just as many people were thinking this, the situation changed. Number 9588 against number 20. Ling Xiao against Ling Xiren? This is going to be interesting. The two people who are closest to 100 consecutive victories are going to face each other in advance. Then, one person's winning streak will definitely end. It was boiling. The audience was completely boiling. Those disciples who didn't qualify for the finals and couldn't obtain 100 consecutive victories loved to watch this kind of excitement. Take a guess. If Ling Xiao meets Ling Xiren, will he still dare to use fundamental martial arts? Haha, don't joke around. Ling Xiren isn't trash. If he dares to use fundamental martial arts, then he will lose miserably. Although many people didn't think that Ling Xiao would dare to use fundamental martial arts against Ling Xiren, to be honest, they still had a trace of anticipation in their hearts. After all, they didn't mind watching a show. Sister Yu, I'll teach this Ling Xiao a lesson for you now. I'll let you see if that brat Ling Feng is better, or if I'm better. Ling Xiren was a little excited, because he had always been looking forward to the battle with Ling Xiao. In this battle, not only did he want to defeat Ling Xiao, but he also wanted to beat Ling Xiao until he couldn't continue fighting and then be disqualified. In that case, he would be able to receive Ling Yu's commendation. He absolutely didn't believe that he would lose. How could he lose to a martial artist who had just broken through to the 3rd level of the martial vein not long ago? Ling Xiao, if you have the ability, don't use Qigong. Facing Ling Xiao, Ling Xiren's only worry was that Ling Xiao wouldn't fight him head-on and instead use his movement technique to dodge. That would be a little troublesome. Don't worry, not only will I not use Qigong, but fundamental martial arts are enough to deal with you. Ling Xiao looked at Ling Xiren and said indifferently. He really disdained this kind of idiot who had been completely bewitched by a woman. No way he didn't use Qigong. He still wanted to use fundamental martial arts. This Ling Xiao didn't put Ling Xiren in his eyes at all, right? The crowd was in an uproar because no one thought that Ling Xiao would be so arrogant. He's definitely bluffing. He'll definitely use Qigong later. Or else there's something wrong with his head. That's not necessarily true. Who knows? Maybe this Ling Xiao is just so arrogant. There's another possibility, which is that he only knows fundamental martial arts and can't use anything else. It's too difficult to rely on fundamental martial arts to win against Ling Xiren. It's almost impossible. Sai, this child is still too impulsive. He was provoked by a single sentence. At the judges' table, some people shook their heads and felt that it was a pity, because even these judges felt that if Ling Xiao only used fundamental martial arts to fight against Ling Xiren, he would definitely lose. They thought that Ling Xiao had fallen for Ling Xiren's provocation. Ling Xiren actually didn't have any intention of provoking Ling Xiao. He just wanted to humiliate Ling Xiao to show his strength. But he didn't expect that Ling Xiao would look down on him so much. What was this, a little beggar? An outsider disciple actually dared to look down on me. Ling Xiren, looking down on my Ling family's disciples. He felt that he had been humiliated. In fact, many of the Ling family's disciples felt that they had been humiliated. This beggar is really audacious. He dares to look down on our clan's disciples. Brother Zion, cripple him. They said cripple, not defeat, because they were really angry. Chapter 42. This guy really has the aptitude to be hated by tens of thousands of people. He offended so many people with just one sentence. Ling Yixue had actually been paying attention to Ling Xiao. Lashi had been paying attention to Ling Xiao since he was very weak, and it was still the same today. Senior Yixue, you're still laughing. This guy actually dared to use fundamental martial arts against Ling Zion. He's simply courting death. That might not be the case. Ling Yixue smiled and was somewhat looking forward to it. On the other side, Ling Yihong's closed eyes opened once again. He was quite surprised as he muttered to himself. Looks like the people from the Prodigy Hall are going to be surprised this time. Our elite hall might be able to make them lose face. Good. Very good. Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao, you don't know what's good for you. Today, I'll let you know what true strength is. Ling Zion's face was gloomy and terrifying. The long sword in his hand trembled, and his eyes revealed a ruthless look. He wanted to cripple Ling Xiao. If it wasn't for the fact that killing was not allowed in this tournament, he would have really killed Ling Xiao. Choose a weapon. Ling Zion took a deep breath and said, There's no need. Ling Xiao still said indifferently, Courting death, snake dance swordsmanship. Ling Zion snorted coldly. The long sword trembled slightly, and the sword instantly turned into several afterimages, as if it was a poisonous snake spitting out its tongue. Snake dance swordsmanship, a high-level sword technique. Looks like Ling Zion is really angry. Ling Zion did not plan to hold back once he made his move. The most terrifying part of the snake dance swordsmanship was its viciousness and treachery. The opponent was often unable to predict where the long sword would come from. Although the momentum of this move could not be compared to those powerful moves, the pressure it gave off was not inferior to those powerful moves. It was as if countless poisonous snakes were staring at it, causing people to shudder. However, although Ling Zion's swordsmanship was strong, people were more concerned about Ling Xiao, because everyone wanted to know if Ling Xiao would say one thing and do another. He said that he wanted to use foundational martial arts, but in reality he didn't. After all, there were no rules for this kind of thing. Even if he used intermediate or advanced martial arts, no one could say anything about it. Ling Xiao didn't care about everyone's gazes. Ling Zion really wasn't worthy of him using a higher level of martial arts. The foundational martial arts were enough. Barbaric Bull's strength. It was still the barbaric bull's strength. Amidst the roars, the silhouette of a bull appeared. Ling Xiao stood there with no intention of backing down. It was actually a foundational martial art. This guy must be crazy. You're courting death. Brother Zion, don't hold back. This fellow is arrogant and deserves to be crippled. After the shock, there was anger. They thought that Ling Xiao was just saying it and wouldn't dare to do it. If that was the case, they would be able to humiliate Ling Xiao. However, they did not expect Ling Xiao to be so straightforward. He was a man of his words. Bastard, get down. Ling Zion's face was gloomy to the extreme, as if a black liquid could be squeezed out from his skin. That face was ashen to the extreme. True qi exploded. Suddenly, the sword in his hand no longer had any afterimages. Instead, it condensed into a giant python. The giant python roared, and the sound was deafening, causing the martial artists near the stage to take a few steps back. The air was also filled with a ferocious atmosphere. Beautiful. Ling Zion's sword has basically displayed the essence of the snake dance sword art. It can transform into a powerful force within the slyness. Ling Xiao is only a third-level martial vein martial artist. Even if he uses all his strength, he won't be able to withstand this sword, not to mention that he actually dares to use foundational martial arts. Although Ling Xiao's performance is amazing, he is too arrogant. This kind of person won't live long. Many people were pointing and gossiping. There were even high-level martial artists in the family who didn't think highly of Ling Xiao. Wang! A violent roar sounded as Ling Xiren's sword pierced Ling Xiao. However, the expected situation of Ling Xiao being pierced by the sword did not happen. Ling Xiao's palms were pressed together and actually caught the sword. The foundational martial arts, barbaric bull's strength, did not have any special moves. It focused on a method of using true qi. Therefore, fists, feet, and palms could all be used. Die for me! Ling Xiren roared hysterically. He used almost 100% of his true qi to display the power of the snake dance sword art to the limit. He was a third-level martial artist. He used a high-level martial arts. If he couldn't defeat Ling Xiao in one move, it would be a disgrace. Break! Ling Xiao's gaze was focused on the long sword in Ling Xiren's hand. Suddenly, his true qi poured into his arms. There was a kacha sound. The long sword in Ling Xiren's hand actually shattered. It broke into 7 or 8 pieces. As for Ling Xiren, because of the backlash of his true qi, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His body retreated a few steps before he could stabilize himself. Looking at Ling Xiao again, he actually stood there without moving. He didn't even seem to have any intention of chasing after him. Impossible! This is impossible! Ling Xiren completely lost his cool. He couldn't believe the current situation. It was clearly an all-out attack, but in the end, not only did it not hurt the opponent in the slightest, but the opponent's true qi also broke the weapon in his hand. What a disgrace! What just happened? The disciples who were watching the show were also dumbfounded. They had imagined many possibilities, but only this scene they really didn't expect. Who can lend me a weapon? My sword is too lousy. Ling Xiren didn't believe that he would lose to Ling Xiao. He blamed the failure of this attack on the long sword in his hand. Yes, although this didn't seem to be wrong, but to completely shirk his responsibility, it was a bit shameless. Ling Xiren, catch! The first to speak was actually Ling Feng. He threw his sword to Ling Xiren. His sword was a treasure sword. Compared to an ordinary sword, it was naturally much better. Ordinary people might not understand why he wanted to help Ling Xiren. Only Ling Feng knew in his heart that he was somewhat afraid of Ling Xiao, so he wanted to thoroughly see through Ling Xiao's background through Ling Xiren. Many thanks. Ling Xiren took the treasure sword and looked at Ling Xiao. This time you will lose for sure. Snake dance swordsmanship. Python swallow. The same swordsmanship. The same move. Ling Xiren obviously wanted to use the treasure sword in his hand and his swordsmanship to completely defeat Ling Xiao. To be honest, the treasure sword in Ling Xiren's hand was indeed not bad. This indeed caused a certain amount of trouble for Ling Xiao. But since he dared to let Ling Xiren catch the sword, he would not be afraid. Barbaric bull's strength. No matter how your wind rages, I will be as steady as Mount Tai. No matter how hysterical Ling Xiren was, no matter how crazy and angry he was, the expression on Ling Xiao's face did not change from beginning to end. It was that kind of indifferent look from beginning to end, as if in his eyes, Ling Xiren was not worth mentioning at all. Bang, bang, bang. In the continuous exchange, Ling Xiao did not use any other martial arts from beginning to end. He only used the barbaric bull's strength to fight with Ling Xiren. He did this to hone his battle experience. Chapter 43. 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves. The scene of a cat toying with a mouse was playing on the stage. How is this possible? Ling Xiao is only using basic martial arts, and he can firmly suppress Ling Xiren. What kind of monster is this guy? Even the stupidest person could see that Ling Xiao could defeat Ling Xiren in a few moves. He did not do so because he was practicing. Ling Xiren's face was pale. His true qi was constantly being consumed to the point where he could no longer hold on. He could not believe it. He could not believe the current situation. Ling Xiao opposite him was like a mountain, and he was more like a stupid wild boar. Even if he collided countless times, he could not move the mountain at all. "Stop, the outcome has been decided." At the judges' table, a person said loudly, "No, I haven't lost yet. I haven't lost yet." Ling Xiren roared almost crazily and then continued to attack. The judges sighed. They only had the right to suggest and did not have the right to force. Unless Ling Xiren was sent flying off the stage or took the initiative to admit defeat, this match would not be over. What do you guys think of this match? Anyway, I'm a little confused. A martial artist at the 3rd level of the martial vein using basic martial arts to suppress someone at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein and using advanced martial arts. This doesn't make sense. A judge frowned and asked a few people around him. Ling Xiao is calm and reserved. His true qi is vigorous and his combat experience is rich. His basic martial arts have already reached the stage of perfection. And although Ling Xiren is at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, his true qi is not as good as Ling Xiao's. He is also more impulsive and lacks combat experience. Although he is using advanced martial arts, he can only display 50 to 60% of his strength. An older judge stroked his beard and said, "This person was obviously the most respected of the judges." His words carried a lot of weight. Although he could not see Ling Xiao's true strength, his basic judgment was not wrong. Basic martial arts have reached the stage of perfection? Is there such a thing as the stage of perfection in basic martial arts? The so-called stage of perfection meant that one had reached the realm of perfection. In martial arts, it was generally believed that only the best martial arts had the possibility of reaching the transcendent state. It was already good enough that he could cultivate his fundamental martial arts to the great perfection stage. How could he reach the transcendent stage? There were no precedents or cultivation methods in this area at all. To be honest, I don't know how he did it, but from the way he used his moves, it was almost flawless. This is the characteristic of the transcendent state. What he said was right. It was impossible for an average person to cultivate martial arts to perfection. Even if one cultivated it to perfection, they would only be able to unleash 90% of its power. After all, this had a lot to do with one's body and aptitude. However, once one stepped into the transcendent stage, one would be able to unleash a martial art to perfection without any flaws. Even if it was a basic martial art, it could still make the opponent feel overwhelmed, especially if the opponent was not very powerful. If that's the case, wouldn't he be able to rely on fundamental martial arts to conquer the world? That's not the case. Fundamental martial arts are fundamental martial arts, after all. Even if it reached perfection and unleashed 100% of its power, there would still be a limit. It would not be a problem to deal with the half-baked Ling Xiren, but if it were Ling Feng, Ling Yixue, Ling Yihang, and the others, it would not be possible. I see. But why would he waste so much time to improve his fundamental martial arts to the transcendent stage? Of course there is a reason. Compared to advanced martial arts and top martial arts, if there is a way, it is easier to reach the transcendent stage with fundamental martial arts. This way, one can accumulate experience and provide experience for advanced martial arts and top martial arts. The elder sighed. This Ling Xiao has always been unknown. In the past half a month, he suddenly rose to prominence. He is indeed a rare genius of the Ling family. His future is limitless. In fact, the most valuable thing is that he is not even 14 years old, but already has the calmness and dignity of a master. This is really rare. Looks like it is finally going to end. As he spoke, he suddenly looked at the battle stage. At this time, Ling Xiren was already a little out of breath. The continuous outbursts had completely depleted his true qi. Ling Xiao shook his head. This kind of sparring partner was no longer qualified. It was time to end the battle. He suddenly stretched out his right hand, pinched the tip with 2 fingers, and then kicked Ling Xiren's chest. Ling Xiren did not have any defensive ability. He could only watch his body fly out and then heavily fall off the stage. Ling Xiren, you have seriously injured so many Ling family disciples. You are not qualified to continue to advance. Ling Xiao stood on the battle stage in high spirits. Ling Xiren, who fell off the stage, was groaning in pain. His ribs were completely broken, and his internal injuries were serious. It was impossible to continue to participate in the competition. Either he forfeited, or he was defeated again and eliminated. There were only these two possibilities. In any case, Ling Xiao really did not like this Ling Xiren. They were all from the same sect, but he was so vicious. It was better to get out of here as soon as possible. Senior Brother Ling Xiao, well done. Long live Senior Brother Ling Xiao. This action increased the number of Ling Xiao supporters once again. Number 9588 wins, 97 consecutive wins. The people at the judges' seats were all shocked. The result of this competition was really out of their expectations. Did you see that? Did you see that? I didn't say it wrong, right? Senior Brother Ling Xiao used fundamental martial arts to defeat Ling Xiren. Too awesome! This is really unbelievable. He actually did it and he really won. Those who supported Ling Xiren felt like they were dreaming. Some people pinched themselves a few times to confirm that it was not a dream. He was originally the focus of the 10,000 people competition, and now he became the focus of attention. Hee, Senior Sister Ishua, your eyesight is really good. You can actually guess such a result. The few female disciples beside Ling Ishua were also very surprised. It's nothing special. No matter how good fundamental martial arts are, it's still just fundamental martial arts. How can that trash Ling Xiren compare to me? Suddenly, a cold snort came from the side. It was Ling Feng. Brother Feng, you must take revenge for me. At this time, Ling Yu, who was leaning on Ling Feng, no longer qualified to advance. He looked at Ling Xiao in the distance with incomparable hatred, wishing he could cut him open with a knife. Don't worry, Sister Yu. You just rest and recover. At this point, he suddenly looked at Ling Xiao and said loudly, Ling Xiao, if you have the ability, you can win 100 consecutive matches to advance. If you meet me, I will let you know that those bullshit fundamental martial arts are all trash. His voice was directly transmitted from the stands to the battle stage. It seemed to be intentional, because he was full of confidence and never thought that he would lose. Don't worry. Fundamental martial arts are enough to deal with you. Ling Xiao was also confident that as long as Ling Feng did not condense earth energy, he could definitely rely on the barbaric bull's strength to win. But he might have to use soaring cloud steps. After all, Ling Feng was not Ling Xiren. He was at least 3 times stronger than Ling Xiren. It would be a bit difficult to use fundamental martial arts, but with soaring cloud steps. Chapter 44. Hearing Ling Xiao's words, Ling Feng's face turned ashen. He did not expect Ling Xiao to look down on Ling Xiren, but not him. Fine, let's wait and see. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and did not say anything else. Instead, he continued to complete his matches. In the next 3 matches, his opponents admitted defeat, so he easily won 100 matches in a row. Congratulations to number 9588 Ling Xiao, the only one to have won 100 matches in a row and successfully advanced to the list of 1,000. Advancing to the list of 1,000 meant that one had entered the elite hall and was no longer a low-level disciple. This made countless people envious. At this time, the sky was already dark, but there was still light. The others were still fighting. But Ling Xiao quietly left the martial arts arena. In his opinion, the only ones who could pose a threat to him were Ling Yixue, Ling Yihong, and the people of the Prodigy Hall. At this time, these people had not shown up, so he might as well go home and rest. Before going home, he went to the medicine hall. What's wrong, little guy? Have you been eliminated? The competition should still be going on now. In the medicine hall, Ling Xiao coincidentally met Ling Jiao and another middle-aged man, who should be Ling Feng's father. The one who asked was Ling Jiu, full of sarcasm. "Oh, it's Lord Ling. I passed 100 matches in a row and advanced in advance." Ling Xiao cupped his hands and then said faintly, and then went to find the master of the medicine hall. Only Ling Jiu and Ling Feng's father were left with an awkward expression. "Ha ha ha, Lord Ling. This kid bullied your Ling Chong a lot in the past. You can't let him continue to jump around, right?" After a while, Ling Feng's father suddenly said with a smile, "Humph, it's good that he advanced. Iron Hand will take care of him." "That's not necessarily true. Maybe our Feng will eliminate him first." These two people obviously still did not take Ling Xiao seriously. They thought that Ling Tai's Ho or Ling Feng could easily defeat Ling Xiao. While they were chatting, Ling Xiao had already taken the Aura Chi Dan and left, a total of 3. Ling Xiao didn't want the two of them to see him. Otherwise, he would get into trouble for no reason. So he left through the back door. After returning home, Ling Xiao ate some dumplings made by his grandfather and entered the training room to begin his cultivation. He swallowed a Gang Chi pill. In just one night, the stellar energy in his third meridian had increased to 90%. He was only 10% away from breaking through. However, there was still a competition today, so he left the 2 Aura Chi pills in the practice room and left to participate in the competition. Yesterday, it was said that the martial arts competition lasted until the middle of the night, and the final 1,000 people were determined. After all, such a battle could only be considered as noobs pecking at each other. It was not very interesting. Other than Ling Xiao, who was a bright spot, everyone else was playing by the rules. It was only right for them to quickly end the match and move on to the next exciting match. The next day, more than 900 disciples who had advanced to the next round, plus 10 seated contestants, gathered at the arena square. Ling Xiao was looking forward to today's duel, because after yesterday's duel, he clearly discovered that his combat experience had improved by leaps and bounds, and his cultivation had also improved to a certain extent. This meant that this kind of battle was definitely beneficial to him and not a waste of time. Today, the 1,000 of you here are all qualified to enter the elite hall. However, in today's competition, most of you will be eliminated. In the end, only a single person will be left to participate in the finals. Now, I will announce the following rules of the competition. The rules of the semifinals were very different from the preliminary round. It was divided into 2 stages. In the first stage, the 1,000 people were divided into 10 groups. Each group had 100 people. Then, these 100 people would be placed on the stage at the same time. The final 10 people would advance to the second stage. This was also the so-called chaotic battle. The higher-ups naturally had their reasons for arranging it this way. A martial artist could not only be strong in a one-on-one battle, they also needed to learn how to protect themselves in a chaotic battle. When he heard about the first stage, Ling Xiao smiled, because this stage was not the slightest bit difficult for him. He did not even need to make a move. He only needed to use his nimble body technique to avoid the attacks. Anyway, the real challenge was the second stage. 10 people would be selected from each group. A total of 100 people would be ranked based on points. In the end, the top 10 with the most points would advance to the final stage. At that time, he would definitely meet Ling Feng, Ling Yishui, Ling Yihang, and the others. That would be a real fierce battle. Therefore, in this first stage, if he could not waste his strength, he would try not to waste his strength. After the rules were announced, Ling Xiao was arranged into the 10th group. The strongest person in the same group was Ling Fei, who was ranked 10th. He was also the person who once competed with Ling Xiao in Qinggong and was defeated. When the competition started, the situation was a bit strange. Not sure if it was prearranged, the remaining 99 people actually attacked Ling Xiao at the same time. This is also possible. Ling Xiao has really offended a lot of people. It's not that he has offended. I'm afraid that someone is jealous and does not want him to continue. Then what should we do? Even if it's Ling Yihang or even Ling Fifan, I'm afraid that they would not be defeated by these 99 people. What should we do? Cold sauce. Although it's a bit of a pity, but I guess he is really going to be eliminated. Although many people were worried for Ling Xiao and felt that it was a bit unfair to him, as long as he did not violate the rules, no one could say anything. However, the following scene caused these people to be both surprised and delighted. They saw Ling Xiao sitting cross-legged in midair, about 20 meters in the air, and could actually stay there for a quarter of an hour. After a quarter of an hour, he landed and instantly rose into the air again. Others could not even touch the corner of his clothes, let alone attack him. At first, Ling Fei wanted to take advantage of the number of people, but seeing this scene, he immediately gave up. Who the hell would go against that kind of monster? Gosh, what kind of qigong is this? He can hover in the air for nearly a quarter of an hour. I don't know. Is there such a qigong in the library? Soaring cloud steps. In a dark corner, Ling Ju viciously punched the wall. He did not expect that he had forcibly snatched the soaring cloud steps and ox demon kung fu from Ling Xiao, but his son and godson could not practice them. He did not get any benefits from being the bad guy, harming others without benefiting himself. That was not all. Now that he saw that Ling Xiao had actually mastered the soaring cloud steps, he almost vomited blood on the wall. The reason why those people were all targeting Ling Xiao was because he had secretly played a trick. In the end, it turned out to be a joke. About 2 hours later, 900 out of the 1,000 people were eliminated, and only 100 people were left. Ling Xiao was the easiest to pass, but Ling Yihang, Ling Yixue, Ling Feng, and Ling Taizhou did not spend much effort, because very few people dared to attack them. Chapter 45. Next, rest for an hour. Do whatever you want. After the end of the first stage, there was an hour of rest. Ling Xiao ate something and then recovered his astral energy. An hour later, the second stage of the competition began. 100 people. Everyone's starting point was 0. Winning a match would give them 3 points, a draw would give them 1 point, and a loss would give them 0 points. The top 10 in the final ranking would advance to the finals and compete with the disciples of the Prodigy Hall. The competition begins now. With the head referee's order, the martial artists became nervous. Because these 100 people's matches were completely random, there was a possibility of encountering anyone. The competition used 20 stages at the same time. Generally speaking, every disciple had to fight 99 matches. In other words, they had to fight with the other 99 people. Therefore, there was no point in escaping. However, some people felt that if they met an expert later, they could at least maintain their fighting spirit. Otherwise, if they lost, their morale would definitely be low. Number 24 against number 98. Number 6 against number 11. As the head referee announced the numbers, the martial artists jumped onto the 20 stages one by one. Number 9588 against number 57. The competition on 20 stages at the same time was actually very fast. Soon, it was Ling Zhao's turn. His opponent was a little fatty at the 3rd level of the martial vein. Hee, senior brother Ling Xiao. I came up to tell you that you will be my idol from now on. The fatty chuckled and actually turned around and jumped off the stage. He admitted defeat. In fact, this was too normal. In the previous matches, there were people who took the initiative to admit defeat. The reason was very simple. When encountering an opponent that was absolutely impossible to win against, it was better to just admit defeat rather than forcefully fighting and wasting one's chi. Anyway, there was no deduction of points if he lost. If he won, he would get 3 points. Many people were very clear about this. Ling Xiao was not surprised. Previously, in the 10,000-man competition, there was also the process of 1,000 people fighting. He had accumulated a lot of popularity. In addition, he was at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein. Even Ling Xiren, who used a high-grade martial art, was easily defeated by him. Anyone who had the slightest bit of self-awareness would not go head-to-head with him. The competition was very fast, because there was a time limit. If the battle couldn't be settled within 15 minutes, the referee team would give a result. Otherwise, some people with similar strength might fight for several days and nights without a clear victor. That would be troublesome. Soon, Ling Xiao met his second opponent. This was a female disciple. Her appearance was not bad, especially her pair of eyes that could captivate souls. She was comparable to Ling Yu. It was just that, in terms of strength, he was still a little lacking compared to Ling Yu. Big brother Ling Xiao, why don't you let me win this round? How about a draw? I'll be your girlfriend, okay? If it was someone else, they would have been bewitched by this woman. Looking at the people below the stage who had hearts in their eyes, which made up the majority, one could tell how powerful this woman was. Compared to Ling Yu's ability to seduce people, she was not at all inferior. It was a pity that after the incident with Ling Yu, Ling Xiao had a natural aversion to beautiful women. In addition, this woman's request had already annoyed him. Barbaric bull's strength. He didn't waste any words and directly blasted the girl off the stage with a palm strike. He would vomit if he took another look at this woman. You beast, you don't know how to flirt. The girl sat on the ground and cried loudly, causing the male disciples to scowl at Ling Xiao. That's too much. No matter what, she's still a girl. So violent. That's right. Beauty, don't cry. I'll go up on stage and teach that kid a lesson later. Keep bragging. You can't even beat Ling Xiao and you want to beat Ling Xiao? You're bragging too much. Obviously, not everyone felt that Ling Xiao was wrong. Ling Xiao also had a group of staunch fans in the crowd. This was the benefit of strength. Number 9,588 wins. Accumulated 6 points. The referee quickly announced the result. This kid is a promising talent. Even a woman can't affect him. He'll definitely become a great person in the future. The referee team still thought very highly of Ling Xiao. The competition continued. Ling Xiao's points also continued to increase. When they met his opponent, they either chose to forfeit, or they were sent flying off the stage with a single move. In order to avoid trouble, Ling Xiao didn't go easy on them. It was to warn those who didn't know their limits, not to provoke him, because he wanted to preserve his strength so that it would be easier to face opponents who could threaten him. I can't tell. What level has this Ling Xiao's strength reached? I keep feeling that he's still hiding his strength. More and more people felt that Ling Xiao couldn't only know basic martial arts. He must have learned other martial arts. He just kept hiding and didn't make a move. Their expectations for him were also growing. After Ling Xiao finished his competition, he didn't forget to observe Ling Yihong, Ling Yixue, and Ling Feng's competition, because, in his opinion, only these 3 people could pose a threat to him. Number 2 against number 4. When Ling Xiao heard this voice, he hurriedly looked towards the direction of the voice. Sure enough, Ling Yixue and Ling Taizhou were standing on one of the stages. Ling Taizhou was currently ranked 4th in the elite hall. Ling Yixue was ranked 2nd in the elite hall. The battle between number 2 and number 4. This is going to be interesting, ha ha ha. Many people surrounded them. It was rare to see such a battle. Ling Xiao naturally didn't want to miss such a wonderful battle, so he also floated over. There should still be some time before his next battle, so he could just watch the fun. To be honest, he hadn't seen Ling Yixue fight yet. Today he might be able to feast his eyes. When he went over, the battle had already begun. Gigantic Spirit, Divine Palm, 9th style. Ling Taizhou pressed on step by step, not holding back. The terrifying True Qi actually turned into the shadow of a giant behind his body. The terrifying power was shocking. Ling Yixue, on the other hand, was in a wait-and-see attitude. She didn't rush to make a move and only relied on her nimble body movement to dodge. What made Ling Xiao slightly surprised was that Ling Tieshou's strength was much stronger than the time he met when he signed up. The power of his moves was more powerful, and he was more skilled in using them. he had completely displayed 90% of the power of the advanced martial arts. In other words, his gigantic spirit divine palm was already considered to be perfect, but it hadn't reached the stage of perfection yet. In a simple comparison, the current Ling Taizhou was more powerful than Li Xingyun in the Dragon Submission mountain range. Of course, he didn't know whether Li Xingyun's strength had increased or not. Ling Taizhou, you're not weak, but unfortunately you're no match for me. After a moment, Ling Yixue began to counterattack. As she spoke, the surrounding air seemed to suddenly freeze. Her palms were dyed with a strange white color, like gloves woven from snow. Advanced martial arts, frost palm. Someone recognized the martial arts move that Ling Yixue used. It said that in order to master frost palm, one must be constantly in a world of ice and snow. Senior sister Yixue must have suffered a lot. Of course, I heard that she often went to the family's ice cellar to practice alone. But once the frost palm is mastered, it's terrifying. Yes, it can freeze anything it touches. This is really a terrifying advanced martial arts. Ling Taizhou is in danger. Chapter 46. Ling Yixue finally counterattacked. Both of her palms struck out, and the air was instantly frozen. Ling Tieshou's body was already covered in ice. Ling Taizhou turned pale with fright and hurriedly retreated. However, it was meaningless. Although Ling Yixue's movement technique was not as good as Ling Zhao's, she was stronger than Ling Taizhou. Her palm landed on Ling Tieshou's chest. Ling Tieshou's upper body instantly froze. Ling Yixue wins. The referee gave a timely judgment. The result was already very obvious. Hearing the referee's voice, Ling Yixue retracted her slender hand and the layer of ice instantly shattered. Ling Tieshou's back was drenched in cold sweat. He looked at Ling Yixue in horror and said, "I'm not your opponent." He knew very well that if Ling Yixue attacked with all her strength from the beginning, he might not be able to withstand 3 moves. Senior sister Yixue is too strong. Ling Taizhou, who is ranked 4th, was actually defeated so easily. The experts of the elite hall were all surprised. They knew that Ling Yixue was powerful, but they did not expect her to be so powerful. They still clearly remembered that Ling Yixue had fought with Ling Taizhou a month ago. Although Ling Yixue had won, it was a Pyrrhic victory. But today she had won so easily. I'm afraid that in the elite hall, only Ling Yihong and Ling Feng are qualified to compete with Ling Yixue. No, Ling Yixue is definitely not Ling Yihong's opponent. That monster Ling Yihong has already broken through to the 4th level of the martial vein. On the other hand, Ling Feng can still compete with Ling Yixue. No matter what, the top 3 of the elite hall were still the top 3 of the elite hall. Up until now, Ling Yihong, Ling Yixue, and Ling Feng had all won. No one could challenge their position. These 3 people naturally became the focus of everyone's attention. And whether they could challenge the rule of the Genius Hall or not, it all depended on these 3 people. As for Ling Xiao, although his performance was outstanding, in the eyes of most people, he was still incomparable to the top 3. After watching the match between Ling Yixue and Ling Taizhou, Ling Xiao returned to the stage, because he was about to welcome his next opponent. He could be considered a relatively strong opponent. This person's name's Ling Cheng. Because he lost to Ling Feng, his original ranking dropped to 5th. Even so, he was still very unique among the top 10 of the elite hall. The scariest thing about this person was that he had practiced thwart kung fu. If he couldn't break through his defense, then he would be tortured by him. Until now, Ling Cheng had only lost 2 matches, one to Ling Yihang and the other to Ling Yixue. Both of them were automatic defeats, and he had yet to meet Ling Feng and Ling Taizhou, so this result was already very good. Ling Xiao, you should just admit defeat. I don't want to waste my energy on you. I still need to save my Zhen Qi to deal with Ling Feng. Ling Cheng had once lost to Ling Feng, so he had always wanted to take revenge. He didn't put Ling Xiao in his eyes at all. He only had eyes for Ling Feng. Below the stage, those who didn't like Ling Xiao were gloating. Who told you to be so arrogant? Now you've met someone strong. It should be said that these people's schadenfreude was not without reason. After all, the strongest opponent Ling Xiao had encountered so far was Ling Cheng. Don't worry, senior brother Ling Cheng. I will help you defeat Ling Feng. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Brat, you're really arrogant. How can you defeat Ling Feng? You're really shameless. Since that's the case, I'll defeat you in 3 moves, so as not to waste my energy. Ling Xiao said with a smile. I heard that senior brother Ling Cheng's thwart kung fu is good. It just so happens that my barbaric bull strength can also be used as a thwart kung fu. Senior brother, why don't you try 3 moves? If I lose, I'll admit defeat. He was completely an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You look down on me, but I look down on you. You. Ling Cheng was so angry that his teeth itched. He originally thought highly of himself, but he didn't expect that a nobody would dare to look down on him. You're asking for it. Don't blame me. Ling Xiao didn't say anything. He stood there and used the barbaric bull strength basic martial arts. But this time it wasn't an attack, but a defense. Zhan Qi was attached to the surface of his body, forming a thin film that could be seen with the naked eye. Although it was just a thin film, its defense was amazing. This kid has brought the barbaric bull strength to life, the old man at the judges' table exclaimed. Only those who have reached the transcendent state can use the barbaric bull strength as a defense. I'm afraid he is the only one in the Ling family who can do it. Humph, he's just bluffing. Ling Qing clenched his fists. A layer of golden Zhen Qi wrapped around his fists. His fists looked as if they were cast in gold. That terrifying power was no less than a weapon's attack. What a powerful force. Yeah, that must be the advanced fist art King Kong fist. It's even more powerful when used together with the King Kong skill. Hee. Everyone knows that Ling Cheng's defense is amazing. In fact, many people don't know that he is the only prodigy who can use thwart kung fu to attack. Even Ling Feng and Ling Yixue wouldn't dare to take his attack head-on. Ling Xiao is too arrogant. The crowd's discussion had already explained everything. No one was optimistic about Ling Xiao. They all felt that Ling Xiao had become arrogant because of his winning streak. Previously, because his opponents weren't that good, it didn't matter. But this time, he dared to be so arrogant against Ling Cheng, who was ranked 5th in the elite hall. He was simply courting death. Hearing the crowd's words, Ling Xiao only smiled faintly. His mountain river martial spirit had already analyzed Ling Cheng's level. In fact, he wasn't much stronger than Ling Xiren, who was ranked 5th. They were both martial artists at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, and both used advanced martial arts. If there was a gap, it would be the difference in the power of their moves and combat skills. In fact, other than the top 3 in the elite hall, Ling Xiao felt that the rest of the people behind could challenge each other. Boom! Ling Cheng's fists directly landed on Ling Xiao's body. A deafening sound was heard, and the entire stage shook a few times. However, what was shocking was that Ling Xiao still had a smile on his face. He didn't even frown. It can't be. The defense of barbaric bull's strength is so terrifying. Ling Qing was extremely shocked. It was as if 10,000 bulls had run past him. He was completely stunned. With one move, the difference in strength between the two could be seen. One was motionless, while the other, as the attacker, was actually forced back 2 steps before he could stabilize himself. Below the stage, the crowd was even more shocked. Every one of them felt as if their hearts were being turned upside down. To be honest, before Ling Xiao, no one paid attention to a basic martial art like barbaric bull strength. They all treated it as a springboard. After learning a higher level martial art, they would throw it away. Who would have thought that barbaric bull strength would become so terrifying in Ling Xiao's hands. Ling Qing stabilized his body and looked at Ling Xiao in horror. This monster, this guy's defense, was simply watertight. Ling Xiao only smiled faintly and still stood there. He had no intention of making a move. The defense of Barbaric Bull's strength had been analyzed by the mountain and river martial spirit. As long as one was below the peak of the third level of the martial vein and did not use earth energy, they would not be able to break through his defense. And this was only the Barbaric Bull's strength at the transformation stage. Ling Xiao had not used the advanced Ox Demon art, Barbaric Bull Demon yet. Not to mention, he still had the Ox Demon art, Qi Explosion art to complement it. In addition, he had not used his earth energy at all. He really did not know who had the qualifications to force him to use all his abilities. Could Ling Yihang do it? Chapter 47. At this moment, the battle on the stage paused for a moment. But without a doubt, the battle between Ling Xiao and Ling Qing had become the focal point of the entire battle stage. Just like the battle between Ling Yixue and Ling Tai's Ho. Why do I feel that Ling Xiao's defense is stronger than Ling Qing's? Ling Yixue, who had fought with Ling Qing before, muttered to herself, "Impossible, Senior Yixue. Bull strength is not a defensive technique. Furthermore, it is only a basic technique. How can it be compared to Senior Brother Ling Qing's high-level defensive technique, King Kong technique? Ling Xiao, I really admire your courage, but if your defense is only like this, then you're definitely going to lose today." Ling Qing was enraged. That punch just now, he did not use his full strength. He only used 70% of his strength because he wanted to save more qi to deal with Ling Feng. But this time he did not plan to hold back. 100% of my strength, King Kong fist. Ling Xiao frowned. Ling Qing's punch was obviously much stronger than the previous one. Then I will also use 100% of my strength to block it. His casual words almost made Ling Qing vomit blood in anger. After all this time, he did not even use his full strength to defend. How awesome! Boom! There was another loud bang. Ling Xiao still did not move, but Ling Qing was sent flying backwards. It took him a lot of effort to stabilize his body. The stronger the attack, the greater the recoil. Too terrifying. Who can break through Ling Xiao's defense? I don't believe in this. Ling Qing took out a pair of gloves from his pocket. Those gloves were obviously made of special materials. That is a common grade artifact. It has an additional effect on the attack. Generally speaking, it can increase the power by 20%. At the judges' table, there were already people who could tell that the gloves in Ling Qing's hands were not ordinary. Other than common grade artifacts, there were also artifacts, spiritual artifacts, true artifacts, immortal artifacts, and divine artifacts in this world. Artifacts were divided into 5 grades: common grade, fine grade, precious grade, immortal grade, and divine grade. Very few of the Ling clan's disciples had ever seen a treasured artifact, let alone a spirit artifact. The martial artists on the referee's stand were knowledgeable, so they recognized the glove at a glance. Ha ha ha, this is a common grade artifact. Let's see if you still dare to block it. Ling Qing laughed crazily. He felt embarrassed that he couldn't even break through Ling Xiao's defense, so he didn't intend to hold back this time. He did not believe that Ling Xiao would be able to block his full power and a common grade artifact, unless Ling Xiao also had a defensive type artifact. So what? Bring it on. Ling Xiao knew that he would not be able to block the attack with just bull force. This time he had to use Qi Explosion to increase the defense of bull force, or else it would be really troublesome. After all, the other party was ranked 5th in the elite hall. He was much more powerful than he had imagined. Ling Qing roared and punched out with both fists again. At that moment, Ling Xiao used the explosive Qi formula, and the thin film on his body thickened significantly. It even emitted a faint glow. With a scream, Ling Cheng was sent flying again. This time he did not stand up, but fell to the ground and fainted. Ling Cheng, who was ranked 5th in the elite hall, was defeated by Ling Xiao without even using a single move. Everyone on the field was dumbfounded. They thought that Ling Xiao's strength would be enough to enter the top 20. It was even possible for him to enter the top 10. After all, Ling Ziran, who was ranked 20th, could defeat the disciple ranked 11th in the 10,000 people tournament. And Ling Xiao defeated Ling Ziran. Although there was pressure to enter the top 10, it should not be a big problem. However, they still did not expect that Ling Xiao would be able to defeat Ling Cheng, who was ranked 5th, so effortlessly. Ling Xiao's performance was too shocking, too eye-catching. Now, there were finally people who began to treat him with Ling Yihong, Ling Yixue, and Ling Feng. This kid is really scary. He actually cultivated the secret techniques, Qi explosion, and Qi return at the same time. A warrior at his level is usually unable to cultivate 2 secret techniques at the same time. Yeah, how many more secrets does he have? That wonderful movement technique from before, and now 2 secret techniques. I'm really looking forward to it, but he should have reached his limit. He should have used everything he can. He's probably just a little stronger than Ling Taizhou. It's not possible for him to challenge the top 3. I think so too, unless he has other tricks up his sleeve. In the stands, there were many Ling families, upper management, and warriors. They made a judgment and analysis of Ling Xiao. They were all shocked, but they did not think that Ling Xiao could surpass Ling Feng, Ling Yixue, and Ling Yihong. But the reality was that Ling Yihong, Ling Yixue, Ling Feng, and Ling Xiao were the 4 disciples who maintained a perfect victory. Although this was because they had not fought yet, Ling Xiao defeated Ling Qing. This already showed how terrifying he was. Among the 4 of them, Ling Xiao was definitely considered a true dark horse, and many people actually liked this kind of troublemaker the most. So Ling Xiao's popularity actually showed signs of approaching the top 3, becoming the 4th most popular person in this elimination round. From a little beggar who was bullied by others to a warrior whose popularity soared today. Other than Ling Xiao's hard work, of course, he should be most grateful for the mountain river martial spirit. If he did not awaken the mountain river martial spirit, he probably would not have the glory he had today. Ling Xiao, Ling Xiao. Every time Ling Xiao went up the stage, there would be many people shouting his name. Among them, there were even some pretty female disciples. This made Ling Xiao somewhat happy in his heart. After all, which young man did not yearn for love? After this new year, he would be 14 years old. He also had some vague understanding of the relationship between men and women. Of course, he also used his outstanding battle results to repay the cheers of the audience. He continued his winning streak. More and more people directly admitted defeat after seeing him. And those who refused to admit defeat, unless they were in the top 10, still could not take 1 move from him. Even the top 10 could not take 3 moves. Of course, he still did not meet Ling Yihong, Ling Yixue, or Ling Feng. In this process, Ling Xiao met a few very interesting opponents. For example, Ling Cheng. This guy who had always bullied him in the past, and now was always bullied by him, directly admitted defeat after seeing him. Ling Cheng did not want to break a few more ribs. And Ling Fei, those who had competed with Ling Xiao in Qinggong, also directly admitted defeat after going up. In the chaotic battle of 1,000 people, Ling Fei had seen Ling Xiao's Qinggong. He knew that he could not win, so he might as well save his strength. What made everyone feel the most inconceivable was that Ling Taizhou also chose to admit defeat after meeting Ling Xiao. Some people felt that Ling Taizhou was scared by Ling Yixue, but Ling Xiao knew best. Although this Ling Taizhou was vicious, he was not stupid. However, he wasn't stupid. He probably saw how powerful Ling Xiao was, so he wanted to conserve his energy to deal with other people. Chapter 48. Ling Yixue versus Ling Feng. After a few more rounds, a heavyweight battle began. Ling Yixue who was ranked second in the elite hall, versus Ling Feng, who was ranked third. This battle naturally attracted everyone's attention again, including Ling Yihang and Ling Xiao, who are currently in a winning streak. Ling Yishui, Ling Yishui, Ling Feng, Ling Feng. In terms of the number of fans, Ling Yishui and Ling Feng were evenly matched. One of them was a beautiful woman with extraordinary talent. The other was a genius disciple of the clan. They each had their own fans. Hence, when they went on stage, there were almost crazy shouts and cheers from below the stage. Ling Yishui, you have rejected my confession of love many times. That is an insult to me. Today, I will make you regret it completely. To Ling Feng, Ling Yishui was the ideal partner in his heart. As for Ling Yu, she was just a substitute. Unfortunately, Ling Yishui did not put him in her eyes at all. He naturally wanted to take revenge for today's battle. Feelings cannot be forced. Moreover, I only want to cultivate now, Ling Yishui said indifferently. Her face was as calm as an ancient well, as if she did not put Ling Feng's provocation in her eyes. Clang! Ling Feng unsheathed his sword. The wind-whisking willow sword drew an irregular sword mark. It was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, making people unable to catch it. The scariest part of this sword technique was that it was treacherous. When you thought it was fast, it suddenly became slow. When you thought it was slow, it suddenly became fast. Ling Yishui did not dare to be negligent. She pushed out both her palms. Cold qi gushed out as if the air was frozen. The people below the stage did not even dare to breathe. After all, this was a battle between the second and third place. Clang! In an instant, the palms that were wrapped in ice met the treacherous sword. However, after a light touch, the sword suddenly changed direction and pierced towards Ling Yishui's waist. Battles were not all about meeting force with force. Ling Feng's wind-whisking willow sword might not be as powerful as Frost Palm, but it was far more treacherous than the Frost Palm. However, Ling Yishui was not easy to deal with. As the long sword approached, she retreated and easily dodged the attack. In the end, Ling Yishui doesn't have the support of her family. She can only rely on her own efforts. If she didn't convert her qi into gang, I'm afraid she would have lost. After more than 10 moves, Ling Xiao gently shook his head. He actually hoped that Ling Yishui would win. But from the looks of it, Ling Feng's sword techniques really couldn't be underestimated. The long sword in his hand was also a common grade artifact. On the other hand, Ling Yishui was barehanded, which was a disadvantage in itself. On the field, they had already exchanged over 100 moves. However, neither side was injured. Ling Feng's sword did not even touch the corner of Ling Yishui's clothes. Ling Yishui couldn't hurt Ling Feng either. In terms of martial skills, perhaps the two of them were evenly matched. The battle quickly entered stalemate. Some of the referees were already paying attention to the time. However, it would be difficult for the referee to determine the winner of this match. Because the two of them were clearly evenly matched, and neither of them could hurt the other. It looked like it could only be a draw. Everyone, it looks like this competition will end in a draw. The head referee looked at the people around him and discussed. That might not be the case. Feng hasn't used his trump card yet. The one who spoke wasn't the referee, but Ling 13, who was standing near the referee's seat. He was Ling Feng's father. He still has a trump card. The referees were shocked. They didn't think that Ling 13 was exaggerating. There must be a reason for his words. Look, the situation on the field is changing. At this moment, someone suddenly shouted, causing everyone to hurriedly look up. On the field, there was a huge change in the battle. After around 200 moves, Ling Feng dodged Ling Yishui's palm attack. Then he suddenly retreated and swung his sword casually. It looked like an ordinary sword strike, but it shot out a strange sword aura. Whoosh! Ding! Although Ling Yishui blocked the sword qi, Her defense was still penetrated, and a small hole appeared on one of her arms. She groaned and flew out of the field. Earth energy. Ling Yixue looked up at Ling Feng with a trace of surprise in her eyes. However, it was just a trace of surprise. Forget it. Let him win. I can't use my earth energy at this moment. She also had earth energy and more than Ling Feng. However, she had her own thoughts. She wanted to use her earth energy in the finals. Turning Qi into earth energy. No wonder Ling 13 was so confident. His son has condensed earth energy. Everyone in the referee's seat was shocked. Although there were many martial artists at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein, it was rare for them to be able to comprehend earth energy. They didn't expect that there would be 2 people who had comprehended earth energy in this year's Hall of Elites. Ling 13, your son hit it well. He only used earth energy now. His talent is amazing. It seems that he will be one of the top 10 in this year's tournament. The head referee sighed. Ling 13 smiled faintly and said, Elder, you're too kind. My son only has a rough understanding of earth energy. Although he said that, Ling 13 couldn't hide the excitement on his face. His son, Ling Feng, was only 15 years old. To be able to enter the top 10 at this age was already amazing. Ling Feng wins. The referee announced the result of the match. Strange. Why do I feel that Ling Yixue didn't use her full strength? Ling Xiao touched his chin in doubt. Although the result was out, he had a feeling that Ling Yixue was stronger than Ling Yixue. Ling Yixue was still stronger than Ling Feng. She was just hiding something. Ling Feng. Ling Feng. Defeating Ling Yixue made Ling Feng's popularity unparalleled. He even had the momentum to surpass Ling Yihang. After all, those who were here to watch the show didn't know how terrifying Ling Yihang was. Yixue, why do you have to do this? Are you going to use your earth energy to deal with me? Ling Yihang appeared beside Ling Yixue and asked faintly, Why would I? I just want to have something to rely on in the finals. Since she was seen through, Ling Yixue didn't hide it. Don't worry, I'll take care of Ling Feng. Ling Yihang only lightly said a sentence, and then closed his eyes again. It seemed that there was no match on the field that could arouse his interest. Ling Feng looked at Ling Yihang and suddenly felt bored. He then looked at Ling Xiao with disdain and resentment between his eyebrows. The next one is you, Ling Xiao. Big brother Feng, you're amazing. Without waiting for Ling Feng to get off the stage, Ling Yu jumped onto the stage and threw herself into Ling Feng's arms. Then she looked at Ling Xiao provocatively. It seemed to be saying, So what if you defeated me? My big brother Feng will take revenge for me. Ling Xiao just smiled faintly. You're really stupid. You think that you can suppress me just because you condensed a trace of earth energy? You only have the qualifications to force me to use the demon ox art, that's all. But your wind-whisking willow sword is pretty good. I'll play with you later. The match continued. After Ling Yixue lost, there were only 3 people who had a winning streak. They were Ling Yihang, Ling Feng, and Ling Xiao. In everyone's eyes, Ling Xiao was just a foil. Chapter 49. Ling Yihang and Ling Feng, the peerless duo. Perhaps the judges thought so too, so they purposely put the battle between Ling Yihang and Ling Feng to the end. Of course, the battle between Ling Xiao and Ling Feng was also pushed back a little. Letting the dark horse, Ling Xiao, walk a little further would make the competition more exciting. Ling Xiao did not disappoint them. Before he met Ling Feng, he had a winning streak and even defeated a few people in the top 10 of the Elite Hall. His popularity continued to rise. Finally, after Ling Xiao defeated everyone in the top 10 except for Ling Yihang and Ling Feng, he met Ling Feng. The previous battle was between Ling Xiao and Ling Yixue. However, it did not last long. After only 3 moves, Ling Yixue admitted defeat. Ling Yixue's eyesight was brilliant. She knew that even if she used her qi energy, she would not be a match for Ling Xiao. It was not worth it to waste qi energy in this kind of battle. This is going to be interesting. Ling Feng and Ling Xiao both defeated Ling Yixue. They are evenly matched. What do you mean, evenly matched? Senior brother Ling Feng won with his own strength, while Ling Xiao was just going easy on him. That's right. With Ling Xiao's strength, how could he win in 3 moves? Ling Yixue probably felt that she had enough points, so she admitted defeat on purpose. Sure enough, most people still felt that Ling Feng, who used qi energy, was stronger. As for Ling Xiao, his winning streak ended here. Ling Xiao, kneel down and admit defeat, and I will not hurt you. Otherwise, you will have to lie in bed for at least a month. Don't even think about participating in the finals. There were only 3 matches left before the end of the competition. They were Ling Xiao against Ling Feng against Ling Yihang, and Ling Yihang against Ling Xiao. Even if Ling Xiao lost all of them, he would still advance. Therefore, the only way to prevent Ling Xiao from participating in the finals was to severely injure Ling Xiao so that Ling Xiao would completely give up on the idea. Ling Feng didn't put Ling Xiao in his eyes at all, especially after defeating Ling Yixue. In his opinion, in the entire elite hall, only Ling Yihang was qualified to be his opponent. Ling Xiao smiled faintly and said, "Originally, I just wanted to defeat you. However, since you are so vicious, I will let you lie in bed for a month." What he said was the truth. He didn't want to deepen their hatred, but the other party's viciousness changed his mind. I won't attack unless I'm attacked. If someone offends me, I will return the favor. Ling Xiao's words immediately infuriated Ling Feng. This brat actually dared to be disrespectful to him even now. Why didn't he think about it? You're going to make it impossible for them to participate in the finals, and they still want to respect you? Wouldn't that make him an idiot? The spectators below the stage were also shocked. They thought that Ling Xiao had obviously seen how terrifying Ling Feng was, but he still dared to oppose him. If he didn't have any real ability, it wouldn't make sense. It's useless to say more. Let's fight. When you're lying on the sickbed, perhaps I'll be kind and send you some supplements. Ha ha ha. Ling Feng said while gnashing his teeth. Let's start. Ling Xiao was too lazy to talk nonsense with Ling Feng. His target was Ling Yihang. Only by defeating Ling Yihang could he become the first in the knockout round, the first in the elite hall. Only then could he truly hold his head high. As for becoming the first in the competition, to be honest, with his current strength, he didn't have much confidence. That Ling Fifan was too strong. Therefore, he had to continue to train and improve. Fortunately, there would be a few days of rest after the knockout round. Perhaps he could make a breakthrough in some aspects. Clang! Ling Feng had already pulled out his long sword. It still looked like an ordinary long sword, but it still made many people shudder. Whoosh! The long sword stabbed toward Ling Xiao at an extremely fast speed. Ling Feng's body movement didn't seem weak either. You'd better use your Gang Qi as soon as possible. Otherwise, you won't have any chance. Ling Xiao only wanted to see how it felt to fight with a martial artist with Gang Qi. The previous battles were too boring for him. There was no challenge at all. You are not qualified. Ling Feng didn't have much Gang Qi. Only 10% of the genuine qi in the first meridian was condensed into Gang Qi. Therefore, he didn't dare to use too much Gang Qi. Of course, in his opinion, Ling Xiao was not qualified for him to use Gang Qi. He didn't believe that he couldn't defeat Ling Xiao with the wind-whisking willow sword at the completion level and the advanced body movement at the completion level. Clang! A strange sword shadow suddenly stabbed toward Ling Xiao from below. The change was so fast that Ling Xiao felt a little surprised. Of course, it was just a surprise. However, the onlookers exclaimed. They thought Ling Xiao was going to lose. Ling Xiao just looked indifferent. He stretched out his right hand and clamped the sword tip with 2 fingers. Get lost! Genuine qi spurted out from his fingertips. Ling Feng felt his right hand go numb. His sword fell to the ground, and he was forced to take a few steps back. He's too strong. He pushed Ling Feng back so easily. The onlookers were shocked. Ling Xiao still stood there calmly. Ling Feng's expression was extremely awkward. I said, "Without Gang Qi, you won't have any chance." Ling Xiao said indifferently, "This Ling Xiao is really a freak, a monster." The head judge shook his head and smiled bitterly. He thought Ling Feng was strong and talented enough. He didn't expect him to be suppressed by Ling Xiao without Gang Qi. "Feng, use Gang Qi. There's no need to hold back." Ling 13's voice sounded. Ling Feng picked up the sword on the ground and looked coldly at Ling Xiao. "If I use Gang Qi, the speed and power of all my moves will increase by several times. You will lose without a doubt." "I've heard the same thing. Don't waste your breath. Let's fight." If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to hone his fighting skills in this battle, Ling Feng could have defeated Ling Feng without giving him a chance to use Gang Qi. After all, a martial artist at the peak of the 3rd level of the martial vein couldn't use Gang Qi freely. Every time he used Gang Qi, his Gang Qi would be depleted. After reaching the 4th level of the martial vein, Gang Qi could be recovered automatically. Ling Feng didn't say anything else. He shook his sword and released his Gang Qi. He thrust his sword forward. Ling Xiao tilted his head because of his experience, but the sword Qi pierced through his clothes. "What a fast sword! What a strange sword! It's really changed." Ling Xiao suddenly became excited. He knew that the barbaric bull force of the martial vein was no longer enough to defeat Ling Feng. Even if he used Qi Burst Formula, it would be useless. Qi Burst Formula was the most effective secret technique at the 3rd level of the martial vein. Once the Gang Qi was transformed into Gang Qi, the effect was not obvious. If he broke through the 4th level of the martial vein and entered the Gang Qi stage, the effect would be completely lost. Therefore, Ling Xiao didn't want to use this secret technique too much because it didn't have much potential. Fortunately, after the Qi Explosion Arts had been swallowed by the Ox Demon Arts, the Ox Demon Arts had its own Qi explosion effect. No matter what martial arts it was, it would be 20 to 30% stronger when used through the Ox Demon Arts. This was pretty good. Not bad at all. You can actually dodge my attack. You're good, but you won't be so lucky next time. Ling Feng originally thought that he could defeat Ling Xiao with one strike. Who knew that he only managed to pierce a corner of Ling Xiao's clothes? His face was a little angry. He shook his sword again, and the sword shadow turned into several sword rays, like willow branches, stabbing at Ling Xiao from different angles. Not only that, his sword move was not finished. Wind whisks Willow sword. Willow is a bright move. Wind is a secret move, and also the real killing move.